ICQ Podcast episode 408, expanding your ham radio activity. Well, hello fellow amateur radio enthusiasts and welcome to this our 408th episode of the ICQ Amateur Ham Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by Keith Schultzman, KR7 Romeo Kilo, Frank Westwell, K6 Foxtrot Whiskey, Dino Puppers, Kilo Lima 0 Sierra, Ed Jones, Kilo 8 Mike Echo Juliet, and Phil Heckingbottom, VK6 Alpha Delta Foxtrot, and of course our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode we join Martin M1MRB, Dan Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform, Caryn KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, Edmund Mike 0 Mike November Golf, and Ed DD5 Lima Papa to discuss the latest amateur ham radio news. Myself, Colin M6BLY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature is our second half hour roundup from HamRadio 2023 in Friedrichshafen, and we're talking to a lot of the groups that can help you expand your amateur radio activity and get you involved in some of the interesting and different things in the hobby. Now, as you probably have noticed, your ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast doesn't take breaks, holidays, and sometimes when we travel, produce even more content and special shows for you. So because of that, your very kind support helps us pay our way and keeps us, as I say, publishing your podcast every fortnight for you like we have been doing now for 15 years. We've currently got a very special donation happening for the 15th birthday, and our first batch of listeners who have kindly supported us are here, and we give thanks to them. So Keith Schultzman, KR7 Romeo Kilo, wishes a happy 15th birthday, and we thank you for that, Keith. Frank Westfold, Kilo 6 Foxtrot Whiskey, says, keep producing the very interesting podcast, and wish all the presenters the very best. So thanks, Frank, for your very kind support. Dino Puppers, who's always comes in for us every year of our birthday. Thank you, Dino, for your continued support. Dino Kilo Lima 0 Sierra says, thanks for another great year of podcasts. 73 from Dino, so many thanks, Dino, for those very kind words. Ed Jones in Ohio, Kilo 8 Mike Echo Juliet, so he just appreciates the love of the hobby and has given us back for the hobby for the last 15 years. So I say thank you very much, Ed. I really do appreciate it. I think you've summed up in words nicely exactly why we do the ICQ podcast. So many thanks there for that very kind donation. And our friend in Australia, Phil Heckingbottom, the VK6 Alpha Delta Foxtrot, also pops along a donation as well for our 15th birthday and wishing us well. So many thanks for doing that, Phil. And I say hope all is well for you there down in Australia. Now, I'd say the month of July is our 15th birthday celebration month, and there's still time for you to get involved and show your love, support for the ICQ podcast and help us out with with everything we do. It's a very simple concept we do. It's called value for value, and all we ask you to do is to think of the value you're going to get from the show you've had today and over the past weeks and months. Turn that into a financial figure, and go to ICQPodcast.com. Now, we've got some pre-made options for you, or you can choose one of your own as well, and you can send that donation to us, and everything you send our way keeps us advert-free, producing your show for you at least every fortnight. And as I say, make sure that we keep producing show for you without breaks or any hiatuses, etc. We just keep on producing this wonderful show for you. Right, well then we're going to continue on with our show today, advert free as we do, by joining Martin, Dan, Caryn, Edmund and Ed to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur ham radio news, including the World Team Championship is to be held in the UK, and the N-Class licenses comes to Germany. But before that, just in case you missed it, our interview with Mark Haynes, Mike 0 Delta X-Ray Romeo, on the announcement of WRTC 2026.
Right. Saturday afternoon, getting the day right once again, and I've just been joined by Mark Haynes, M0DXR. Great to see you, Mark.
Nice to see you, Martin. How are you doing?
We're ducking and diving as always, and a little bit of trouble getting the old video to go, but, I always said I had a face for radio.
No comment. Move on.
Oh, dear. So, Mark, you come a fair old way down to my part of the world. But you have some interesting information that you can tell us, which you've held me on an NDA for a good 2 or 3 weeks now. and I've been quite excited about this.
We're getting very excited. For the past 6 or 7 months now, I've been working with a team, a committee that was formed in January to place a bid to the sanctioning committee of the World Radio Sport Team Championship, otherwise known as WRTC, which is known as the Olympics of Amateur Radio. It's a contest event which will be taking place in the United Kingdom in 2026. The current WRTC in Italy is happening over this weekend in the IARU contest, and we're really excited to be bringing that event to the UK in 3 years' time.
Yes, certainly. I believe the contest is actually happening as we're speaking, but it's great news that the UK have got it, and congratulations to yourself for organising this. It must have been a lot of work to get it.
We've got a really strong team of extremely well-known contesters that are very good at what they do and also very good in fields of business, which is what puts us in a very strong position to host this event in 2026. We've actually only really done the easy part. We've got a lot to do. There's an immense amount of planning involved. We'll be setting up 50 identical HF stations covering 10 metres through to 80 metres for the event in 3 years' time. And the whole event will be about a week in duration, and it will include visits around the southeast of the UK. So we'll be hosting probably around about 500 or 600 people that will travel in from all over the world. That will consist of 100 competitors, so each team is 2 operators. We'll have 50 referees that will be looking over their shoulders during the contest, who will also come from all over the world. And we'll have visitors as well, spectators of the event. But we really need to call out to the UK amateur community for volunteers to come forward to help us with building antennas, managing the sites, managing the headquarters where all of our competitors, referees and visitors will come. So watch this space. There's going to be a lot of press material going out over the coming months.
Yeah, well, that's explain what you're doing, and I'm really pleased you've asked us to help you with promoting this, and we'll work with you promoting going forward. And guys, not today, but start putting in your diary that if you want to help, round about early 2026, Mark's going to be looking for volunteers to put up antennas and things like that. And to me, that's part of the fun of our hobby. So even if you can't operate in the contest, you can be involved with it by helping out.
Yeah, there's going to be a real team that will come together. There'll be a real team spirit for this event. We'll be offering personalised T-shirts and caps for all those volunteers that come forward to make them feel part of our wonderful team. At the end of the event, we'll be selling off various antennas, masts, rotators, all sorts of things like that. And obviously for our volunteers, we'll be doing those at a very attractive price, if that would be of interest, maybe to radio clubs or individuals. So there's lots of work to do. We're ready to go and extremely excited about this wonderful event.
Yeah, sounds good. And do you mean you're going to try and get me out of an orange shirt? I don't think you've ever seen me when I'm not in an orange shirt, have you?
We might have to. Well, maybe we can do a special orange WRTC shirt. How about that?
That's not a bad suggestion. Listen, it's great news we've got it. The UK. Great work from yourself. Really appreciate what's going to happen. And I'm really proud that you asked us to help you with publicising a lot of this. So thanks very much for your time on this one, Mark, because I know you're short of time today. But there will be more from Mark and I on this as time goes on.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, and really appreciate all the work you do, the excellent work that you do for the ham radio industry. And we're really excited to continue the promotion of the event with you. Thank you.
No problems. Listen, look after yourself, Mark.
Thanks very much.
Well, hi guys, and welcome to episode 408 of the ICQ podcast, and tonight's round table for that episode. And it's cracking on very quickly, 408. But tonight I'm joined by Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Martin, how's it going?
It's going pretty well at the moment, Dan. Very busy, but pretty well. I'm also joined by Caryn, KD2GUT. Hi, Caryn.
Hello, Martin. Good to see you again, or to hear you again.
Well, one day I think we will get to meet in person, so don't worry about that, Caryn.
Okay.
That's not a threat, honest. Oh, dear. Back to the UK, I have Mr. Edmund Spicer with me, M0MMG. Hi, Edmund.
Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, good to have you, Edmund. And over in Germany, where I saw him a couple of weeks ago, we have Mr. Ed Durrant, CD5LP.
Guten Abend, Alan. Come on. Have you been practicing your German, Martin? Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Yeah, not as much as I should, Ed. I meant to do it, but we've just been so busy this year. I got the CDs out, started listening, and other things overtook, which was a real shame. But never mind. We all enjoyed ourselves in Germany, and I think it was a really pleasant time there. I will say one very quick thing, though. My granddaughter, who came with Colin, she's 18, suddenly realised just how hard we work when we're there. But that's another story. Right. Well, what you guys don't know is, and I'll say, is that our interview that we did with Mark Haynes about the WRTC has just been played in front of us going to the news roundtable so that people know what we're talking about, just in case they missed it. But an absolutely brilliant one. The World Radio Team Championships for 2026 are going to be held in the UK. Quite a coup for us. But I know, Caryn, when I spoke to you about it, you were quite excited as well, weren't you?
Oh, I was totally excited. I mean, this is a great way to be involved with the Olympics. It's really what it is, and to know some of the players, and of course to be part of ICQ's involvement. This is terrific. We're just coming off of Bologna, and now there's already some synergy for the next one. So I'm ready.
Well, that's good news if you're ready. Ed, I know you was involved about 8 years ago, was it? Or 4 to 8 years ago when Germany had it.
Yeah, in 2018, the World Radio Sport Team Championships were here, and I was very proud to be a member of the media team there. And I was saying before our recording started, the amount of work that's involved, not just on the week that it's all happening, but actually for years before. There is an awful lot of work that Mark and his team will be facing from now on. So please, if you can volunteer to help, do so. And even if you're not a contester, I'm not a contester, but it's a very important event for amateur radio in general. And the fact that the UK got it, I was quite honestly quite surprised, Martin, because the last two have been in Europe. It was Germany, then Italy, and now the UK. I was expecting it perhaps to go to Asia or back to the US. So Mark's done very well in grabbing this for the UK. And it'll be based in the southeast of England. And the reasoning for that is a lot of the land in that part of the country is fairly flat. And so you can get equal conditions, equal facilities for all of the 50 teams. And that's one of the main rules of the WRTC. It is teams, in this case, in 2026, it'll be 50 of them, two people teams, and all with similar equipment and the identical antennas, and competing against each other as if it was the Olympics. So something really, really, really to look forward to. So the listeners, if you can help, check out the website and see if you can, as soon as they start opening up for volunteers, whether it be to test out antenna sites, test out antennas, or obviously during the week itself, they need a lot of volunteers. But even before then, please volunteer if you can. Okay, end of my little promo for them. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Mark, and I've known Mark probably 10, 15 years. and really nice guy, really good contester, and really passionate about what he's doing and a real professional. So I have no doubt this will happen. I'm really pleased for him. As you said, Southeast England, the map that I saw was showing potentially Norfolk, a little bit of Suffolk and a little bit of Cambridgeshire. Potentially it's that sort of area, which is not too bad for European travel, in fairness. But it'll bring quite a big boost to the area, and I'm sure we'll probably be there while it's going off. But that's 3 years away, so, got to think about that as we go forward. So, yeah, good one. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I like this event. I mean, I think it's kind of a cool thing, but I'm not quite as excited about it as our other two presenters here. I'm not a big contester, and I don't know. I guess that's my feeling.
Yeah, I understand. And in fairness, you're in the States, it's happening in the UK. Why would you get terribly excited about it?
I'd probably feel the same if it was here.
But I'm personally thinking here is that if done right, this should be a real publicity event for amateur radio.
You know what? I don't even know about that, to be honest. If you bring that up, this is a very specialized niche kind of activity, and I'm not so sure that it's even that much of a PR thing.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Either you're going to be right, Dan, or I'm going to be right. But either way, the ICQ podcast will be right.
Well. So this actually is. You bring this up. This would be a good thing to do, is have somebody go back and look at the number of new licensees in Germany and Italy after they've held this event. If it's been a good thing, we should have more new licensees, and I'll eat my hat. But I don't know. Like I say, I'm not so hepped up on this.
What I've noticed, Dan, is in the last, I suppose, about 3 days, my friend requests on Facebook have gone through the roof of people that now we're making these announcements and one thing and another have got very much want to follow myself and the ICQ podcast. So I'm open-minded at the moment, and I really want this to work. So, yeah, we'll go give it some and see how it goes. Edmund, I know you're not a contester, but you've got to be a little bit excited, haven't you?
Indeed, I'm not a contester, so I don't have a vested interest in that sense. I presume that the primary purpose of this event is not to attract newcomers to the hobby, but for experienced contesters to battle it out amongst themselves. And why not? There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm not a contester, but one of the things that the UK does tend to do quite well is host major events of all kinds. And this is a pretty major event as they go. I presume it's the first time the UK has ever held it in the 4 decades or so that the WRTC has been around. And whilst I don't know the gentleman you interviewed personally, Martin, I'm very pleased that all the hard work that him and his team of people have doubtlessly put in as well, I'm glad that has been rewarded in the shape of a successful application. So I am pleased this is coming to the UK, and may the best team win, whoever that may be. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, and I think it's a celebration of, say, the best contest operators in the world all get together and have a good time. So that'll be a good one. Anybody that's interested in looking at the WRTC website for 2026, the website is http://www.wrtc2026.org, and more information is being added all the time. So it's a new website. It only went live Monday night, but there's a lot of information up there, and more seems to be going up all the time. So I think we'll watch this one with interest, and I told Mark that I'd support him. Mark Haynes, I told him I'd support him going forward. Mark Haynes' call sign is M0DXR, so he's got a nice call sign for what he normally does. Hi. Okay, let's have a look at the next news story. Student journalists had made a video of the GB23C SSES video. Now, that was a super special event station. That's what that's all about. But the GB23C was the special event call sign for the coronation of King Charles, and Cray Valley Club in the UK had it on a naval establishment up in Greenwich. So, good one. Edmund, you like special event stations, don't you?
I do. I must confess that due to my own disorganisation, I've not actually watched this video yet, but I definitely will, and I see from the description that it's only 4 minutes long, and my immediate reaction is I'm sorry that it isn't a bit longer than that. Got a lot of time for the Cray Valley Radio Society in South East London. I'm not a member, but I did visit them in 2012 for the 2 Oscar 1-2 London mega special event station for the Olympics that even today, 11 years later, still stands head and shoulders above all other stations in the UK, if not worldwide, in terms of the number of QSOs they made. So if there is any club or organisation anywhere in the UK that can put on an event on this scale, then Cray Valley are that club. So if special event stations are your thing, then have a hunt around on their website and their YouTube channel and the internet in general for all and any special event stations they've ever been involved with, and you won't fail but to be impressed, Martin.
No, well, I've actually over the years done at least 2 talks for Cray Valley Club on their club nights. Great club, great bunch of guys. The last talk I did was on oscilloscopes, and the gentleman who asked me to do it about a month later rang up and told me, he said, "You wouldn't believe how many people have gone out and bought oscilloscopes since your chat." But no, that's a side one. Caryn, you come from a journalist background, and this is obviously good training for somebody to make videos like this, and hopefully it'll be kind of good on the latest CV. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic when young student journalists take on, well, ham radio. I think, first of all, student journalists are being trained right now to be in the 21st century, and the fact that they acknowledge that ham radio is still a part of the 21st century going forward is really good. Like Edmund, I have not had a chance to see this video, but I want to compare it to something that was released just a couple of months ago, which was a documentary called Ham, which another student journalist did, which much longer than just a couple of minutes. And it was a film in Montana, and it actually was broadcast on Montana Public TV, which is our non-commercial broadcast TV. And it gained a very, very wide viewing. The fact that young journalists who are training for the future and are going to carry the industry forward, and God knows the industry is really changing in almost a gut-wrenching way from what it used to be for all those who've gone before us. They recognize that ham radio is valuable, that ham radio is still a way to communicate. They're giving people insights into it. And these are, I don't want to say kids, they're not children, but they're youth and young adults who have gained respect for what ham radio can do. It's not, we're not a bunch of people walking around staring at our cell phones. We're doing things. We're helping save lives. We're We have nets during emergencies. We have all sorts of things. We celebrate history. So any effort by any student to do this with respect, and it seems to me it's always done with respect by these students. We are not an archaeological dig. We are living, breathing amateur radio operators with tremendous relevance, and fabulous that they take the effort to turn it into a project and to share it with viewers and listeners. That's just super.
Yeah, the more the more publicity we can get, the better, as I often always say. And I hope this lady does very well with her video on this one. Ed, what's your thoughts?
I'm going to just say I've got nothing more to add, quite honestly. Well done on her doing the video. I'd like to see it. I'm still searching to try and find it on the interweb. And yeah, good luck to her. And the more people that get interested through these videos, the better, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, videos are good and fun, but I still enjoy reading Dan's blog. And Dan, you're an author. People are buying your books still. So the old technology hasn't disappeared. But what do you think about this one?
Well, like they say, new media don't negate the old media, right? I mean, we still have radio. We still do have a few newspapers. So rather than replace them, the new media are always augmenting them or increasing the number of media we have. And having said that, I hate to say this, but video kind of is the way to go. Video and podcasting, like we do. I mean, people are still interested in listening to us, and the number of YouTubers are an incredible number of ham radio YouTubers. So yeah, I just think that's the way to go. Blogging, yeah, I still do it, but I like being on podcasts too.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you joined us and you are with us, Dan, because you do bring a lot to the group. So, but yeah, new media. Even we as an audio podcast put out a number of videos every now and again, as some of you will have seen on our YouTube channel. So yeah, it's all there. Right, Dan, I ripped this one off your website, your blog anyway. So I'm going to get you to go first on this one. But Michigan Hams exempt from distraction driving law. Would you like to go on that one?
Yeah, sure. So this is happening in a lot of states around the U.S. is that they're passing distracted driving laws. The number of automobile accidents that are attributed to distracted driving is really kind of enormous, and so it's a good thing that we're passing these laws. I think the flip side of that is that a lot of times legislatures really don't understand amateur radio and or emergency responders, so they may word the laws such that it also makes operating an amateur radio an illegal activity. Well, fortunately, here in Michigan, we have a pretty good legislative liaison, and they were able to make sure that the law included an exemption for amateur radio operators, citizens band radio operators, actually, and medical devices. So if you're because the way it's worded is you can't use a mobile electronic device in a vehicle, and so if you had some kind of medical device that you needed to use, that theoretically could also be an illegal thing to use. And of course, you may need to actually use it in some cases while you're driving. But anyway, so our legislative liaison here was able to get wording into the law that exempted us, and that's a good thing. I hope if other states are thinking of doing this, they might use Michigan as an example here of how to exempt amateur radio from these laws.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and yeah, it's not something that you can instantly blanket say yes, no on a lot of these things. If you start doing one thing, the next thing is they'll say, "Oh, you can't use hands-free units," and then that escalates. But Edmund, I know you don't operate mobile. or I'm pretty sure you don't, because when I see you driving, you don't have your antenna on the car, although you can fit one when you're stationary. Well, what's your thoughts on operating from the car?
Well, as an aside, I noticed that the text here mentions amateur radio and citizens band, but for listeners in the States, it doesn't mention FRS or GMRS on UHF frequencies or MURS on the VHF frequencies, so be careful. My personal view, which is possibly a minority view, is that if I'm sitting behind the wheel, I want as much of my concentration to be on the road in front of me and what's going on as possible. So I would not use, personally, a radio when I was at the wheel. I would be driving or I would be parked and using the radio. I'd be doing one or the other, but not both at the same time. And I certainly wouldn't use a fist mic, because even if technically it was within the letter of the law, the police could still do you for driving without due care and attention, careless driving or dangerous driving. And in fact, a few years before I got my license, I was reading Practical Wireless. So we're going back 15 years at least. And I remember a series of letters in there from a chap. He was a Mike 3 station, I think, possibly down in Devon or Cornwall, somewhere down there, who had been pulled over for that very thing. And he argued quite correctly that what he was doing was legal, and the police took him to court, and because they couldn't get him on that, they just said, oh, well, you're driving without due care and attention. And obviously, if you have a court case where the police say you were doing that and you correctly say, no, I wasn't, well, it's fairly obvious who the court's going to pay attention to. So my personal view is don't do it. Drive or talk on the radio, but don't do both at the same time.
Yeah, interesting. And well, I have had hands-free in the car. At the moment, I've got a fist mic, as you well know. But my car pretty much, or Carol's car pretty much drives itself. You just have to point it in the direction you want to go. I, like you, I would never ever again operate HF from the car. The UK roads are far too busy, along with the fact that I find it difficult tuning it in and doing the adjustments, whereas VHF is often the FM part is channelized, so that's not so difficult, and the audio is better. So that's my feeling on it. Caryn, what's your feelings?
Oh, I have a couple of thoughts, and I had a question too that this does raise. I'll say I do not operate mobile ever from my car. If I'm in my car with my radio, I'm parked and it's a rainy day and I'm doing POTA and staying dry. So that's the only time I'll be inside the car doing any radio stuff. I've been tempted to take DMR into the car with my hotspot. But I asked myself why. I've got enough amusements in the car as it is. I don't need to add another. And I agree. When you live in a place like New York, where the drivers can be somewhat insane, you really need to pay attention to the road and the other drivers. And nothing is so urgent that it can't wait. Modern cars are distracting enough with all those screens. You know, it's practically, you get behind the wheel, you're practically looking at a video game when you get behind the wheel these days. The thing that it remains unclear to me is what will be covered under this with some of the apps that are now available. One can use a smartphone for Echolink. One can use a smartphone for DMR. I assume D-Star, many of the other modes too. I'm assuming that these are covered as well. However, you are using a mobile phone to access, and I since I don't use these apps, I don't know if the mobile phone goes through the integrated, what they call infotainment systems that are now built into modern car electronics. So I think that's going to be a gray area that needs to be looked at. All in all, I will say this, as someone who loves to talk on the radio. Well, yeah, what do you do about people who want to send CW while they're driving? I just want to add that. I have heard some hams, they will go unidentified, who will send CW while driving. I think that's nuts. Okay, I'll just say that. But, and I love CW, but I wouldn't do anything behind the wheel except drive. Cars are for driving. In an emergency, all bets are off. Okay, in an emergency, you have a hurricane or major crisis or something going on. Yeah, you bend the rules, you bend them a great deal. But for everyday operation, I don't know. I think the law needs to be there. I believe it should be there in the case of emergencies, but I don't think people should go wild and crazy with it unless there's really a genuine need, because this is not something you want to tinker with behind the wheel. So those are my feelings, which I'm afraid are a bit strong, but I do believe firmly in road safety. Back to you, Martin.
Well, your feelings are very justified, and one of the things I like about our groups is that we can agree without coming to fisticuffs, and your opinions are equally valid. The guy who taught me amateur radio back in the early 2000s or late 90s, early 2000s, he told me he used to operate with a Morse key strapped to his left knee while he was driving along. Now, that to me would do my head in, but I understand that's what he did. But then the traffic was much, much quieter. Go back 40, 50 years ago, there was the traffic's on the road now. In Ireland, just throwing this one in Ireland, Colin looked at using network radio, which effectively is a mobile phone that looks like a radio with a PTT. And the laws in Ireland say you're not allowed to use a mobile phone unless it's hands-free. So he bought one of these network radios and then realised he couldn't use it because in Ireland they actually put the frequency bands that the devices work on and saying you can't operate in these areas unless you're hands-free. So he ended up selling it. Ed, I've waffled on a bit. What's your thoughts?
Well, there's a few things in here. First of all, on the wording, where it's referring to mobile electronic devices as not being allowed. With modern cars, you're driving a mobile electronic device. So what this law is saying, if it doesn't say in the details somewhere personal device, you're basically saying you can't drive any cars, anything that's younger than about 10 or 15 years, because they're all got computers in them. And that brings me on to another point, because somebody mentioned operating HF mobile. Any modern car, the electronics in it absolutely wipe out the HF bands. So you physically can't do it anyway. The only situation I could see where somebody might want to operate amateur radio from their car is when they're stuck in a traffic jam. Yeah, so they're not going anywhere. They're effectively parked up waiting for half an hour for the accident to clear ahead of you or the roadworks to open up or whatever. That might be justifiable, but to build everything in just for that, it's a lot of effort to go for once in a while using the radio. One other point that we sort of touched around the edges on, some of the car electronics units, or head units as they're referred to if you fit them yourself, are Android based. So it's not a mobile phone, but it is a mobile phone. So one way that is a very safe way of installing an amateur radio is to actually use an app on one of these Android head units that controls then either via Bluetooth or USB cable your radio that you've got mounted under the seat or in the back or whatever. and it's all controlled then through the car's existing hands-free capabilities. So, there are ways of doing it, but is it worth it? And yeah, maybe on VHF, UHF, where you go into work, you always get stuck in a traffic jam on the M25 for half an hour every morning, then yeah, maybe it's worth having it for, getting to the 2-meter repeaters or whatever. But for HF, with electronics in cars these days, and the electric cars are even worse, it's simply not worth the effort, in my opinion. Again, we all have our own opinions. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, I didn't think everybody would agree on this, but we've covered lots of things around this subject. And yeah, I've done various naughty things, I suppose, but I do operate occasionally. In fact, I haven't operated as much recently from the car. Drove all the way down to Germany and back, and I don't think I used the radio in the car. I used the handy-talkie in the hotel with a hotspot as well, but yeah, that's another thing. And I have used, Caryn, I have used DMR with a hotspot, or actually Fusion with a hotspot in my case, when I've done both, odd times. And it does work. But the biggest problem is you're more likely to run out of cellular cover than you are RF cover. Anyway, another story. Let's move on. Hams honour retired search and rescue planes. Now, Hams search and rescue planes, is Hams honouring them? So I read forward, then I decided to let Caryn go first on this one, because you raised the issue with us, Caryn. So what do you think?
Okay, another favorite theme of mine, Martin, is the synergy of people who love history and people who love ham radio. And this certainly covers that category. The people who've put this together, which is an activation of amateur radio in 4 locations aboard retired search and rescue airplanes of the Canadian Air Force, using the onboard antennas of these Buffalo, they're called the Buffalo aircraft. So this is when I first got the notice that Buffalo is on the air, I thought, oh my God, this is animal cruelty. What's going on here? And then I realized these are the Buffalo aircraft, what they were called. These aircraft perform very important work in search and rescue, and were very, very quietly retired during the pandemic. Normally, there would be some kind of ceremonial acknowledgement of it, but the pandemic being what it was, that was kind of off the table. So these aviation enthusiasts, in particular, one of the hams, who is a airplane mechanic for the Buffalo aircraft, loves and knows them, decided, let's do this at 4 different locations, the easternmost being in Prince Edward Island in Canada, and going west across the provinces at 4 different locations. So the hams will be calling CQ. They will also have a net. They're going to try anyway to have a net between the four planes. They are going to invite people in the local area to come and watch the activations. I'm guessing they will get to see the interior of the plane, and they get to see the people operating. What a great acknowledgement, once again, for the kind of life-saving work that these planes were involved in, and what a terrific way to mark the end of service for 4 very, very important pieces of equipment for the Canadian Air Force. Yeah, I was pretty excited about this, and a ham friend I know in PEI contacted me about it and said, I love this. He says he loves aviation. He says this is just, the people involved with this feel the same way about it. It's, it's not just an airplane. It saved people's lives. It found missing people. It did so many things. And in they deserve their moment in the sun. So I'm very happy that we've been able to tell their story, and look forward to the event. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, as you say. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. Dan, you live in the northern part of the States, or to me, it's the northern part, not tremendously far from the Canadian border. Would you be able to work these guys, do you reckon?
Well, I'm not sure. I think maybe these folks are out in the West somewhere. It doesn't really say, does it? But VA7, VA7 is British Columbia. That's out on the West Coast. So I'm not sure I'll be able to actually work these folks. But I love intersection of ham radio and history, and sounds like they're going to be doing special events, and special events are always cool. So that's good. That's all good. Hey, talking about being up in the north, Detroit is maybe the only place in the U.S. where Canada is actually south of Detroit. So that's just a little trivia, geographical trivia.
Well, that's a good bit of trivia, Dan. Yeah. And I got to say, ham radio, and I know Bob Heil says this as well, but ham radio has really been an education for me because, in fairness, when I was at school, I wasn't interested in history. I wasn't interested in geography. The teachers that did history and geography were boring. It was just a waste of my time being there. Since ham radio, with all these interesting things happening, and you find out where places are and all the good things. To me, that's been quite an education over the last few years. So I like this story. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, actually, if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's quite an interesting aircraft, and it's been around a long time. The C-115 Buffalo is actually a short takeoff and landing aircraft. It found its first usage in Vietnam in 1964-65 onwards. That makes it 59 years old. So, it's been upgraded all the rest over the years, but for an aircraft to exist for 59, nearly 60 years since it was originally designed, that says a lot for that particular aircraft, that it was of value in several different roles, the most important ones being the last few years in search and rescue, as we've said. And it's actually great to see that somebody is taking the time to celebrate these, and I believe the stations are spread across Canada. I don't know how far across, but I think the idea was to get them so that they could communicate with each other in a hop fashion across from west to east or east to west across Canada. So I wish them all the best of luck with this. It certainly will get some publicity for the aircraft and hopefully also for amateur radio. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, hopefully it will. And nice bit of history. And one of the things I really enjoyed when I was out in the States, and I know this is Canada and not the States, but going to the Air Force Museum, that was really interesting. I could have spent longer there. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Edmund, you like working special events. This might be a special event station if you got your antenna pointing the right way.
Well, I don't really point my antennas because I tend to go in for inverted V dipoles and things like that. It's only at VHF that I have Yagis and antennas that I can point in any particular direction. But I think I'm right in saying I've never actually worked a special event station in the States. So maybe here's an opportunity. It mentions that there will be an attempt to have a net amongst all four planes on 2 meters. Well, if there's going to be an attempt, that suggests to me that there must be a certain distance between each of these planes. So if that's right, rather than them all being in the same place, perhaps people who are interested in seeing them and interested in aviation and history could do a buffalo crawl, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be fun, I think, and it's amateur radio history and preserving stuff that we need to preserve rather than send it to the scrapyard. So to me, it's a good story.
But rather than a crawl, I think you'd want to do a stampede, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
You mean a Calgary stampede?
something like that.
Well, that's what buffalo do, right? They're herd animals and they stampede.
They do. And big animals they are too. Right. Next one. And Caryn did this one again, so I'm afraid, Caryn, you're going to have to go first. But study of commercial satellite constellations emits RFI. Now, this is something that it's been spotted by a gentleman in Germany with his radio telescope. These satellites are causing all sorts of interference. What do you think, Caryn?
Well, a lot has been said about so-called space junk, although this is not junk. These are active new satellite constellations, such as the ones being put up by commercial entities like SpaceX to provide internet, broadband access, and other services and collect images of the Earth. Looks like they're interfering with some research. The electronics on board these little satellites apparently are generating some electromagnetic radiation, and radio astronomers are having a real time of it trying to deal with that. This was definitely not expected, but what they did was a bit of a study at it's the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy over in Germany, and they were looking at, I believe it was 68 of the little satellites in the constellation, and they studied them for these emissions because they had made the discovery that the low frequency array telescope that they used was definitely getting some interference, and then it was hampering its ability to do its job. So that's the study that was published. Gosh, I guess the question is, now what? Now what do you do with it? Because I don't think SpaceX is going to take down its constellation. I don't think the other entities are going to take down their constellations. And I don't think radio astronomers are going to stop doing their research. So I want to say stay tuned. I really don't know what the easy answer would be to something like this, but it's not a good situation. I think a lot more planning needs to be done. A lot more safeguards need to be built into systems like this if we're going to keep sending things up above the earth as we seem to be doing. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept and what's going on. I think even on in the UK on the ground, we have power line technology where they're pumping the internet over power lines and various bits and pieces. The wireless internet adapters through houses on power lines and things like that create a phenomenal amount of interference. This is creating a phenomenal amount of interference to radio astronomers. Unfortunately, as I see it, I don't like it, I don't condone it, but we are in the minority. We here care about not causing RFI. We care about wanting to do things right. 99.9% of the general public are going to go tough to the poor astronomers because they want their social media everywhere in the world at half a nanosecond delay. So I think the biggest problem is going forward, there's so much RFI now in all sorts of things that the general public, well, I can't hear it, so it don't matter, does it? Well, yes, it does. What do you think, Ed?
Well, just to give a bit of background on what or who the Max Planck Institute are, it's not one person. It's probably the leading organisation in the world for setting technical standards. It's a research institute that has found all kinds of medical research. They've done research into space, obviously, is an area they go into. They are a very highly respected and very important organisation. If they come up and say something is wrong, oh yeah, by the way, they also did research into X-ray lasers. Who knows what comes in the future, but putting up there, sorry for the French, but, putting up stuff in there that's creating interference is unacceptable. And it has to be stopped. And if it means taking the license away from the people like SpaceX or the other companies, because we haven't got it listed in this report, but they're not the only ones. If the electronics on the systems that they are putting circulating around the Earth is causing RFI, is causing impact to research, it has to be stopped. And you'll say commercially, because we're in a capitalist world, it's hard to get it stopped. But, if we don't, then who knows what will come next. But, and at the moment, they're putting up, another 50 every day or something? It's getting out of control. That's my little rant for this time around. But the fact that Max Planck Institute has highlighted this as a major problem does mean it's a major problem, and it shouldn't get swept under the carpet because it needs to be fixed. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, I don't think that was a rant, Ed, and I do think it needs to be fixed. So you're dead right on that one. Edmund, what's your thought?
Well, I wondered why my device at home that connects to my outside weather station on 77s wasn't receiving all the signals in the last few days. So now I know Starlink has been QRMing my weather station. Yeah, I agree with the sentiment of what Ed said. That wasn't French, by the way. I can tell you how to say that in French if you're interested. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because the radio astronomers are dealing in the weakest of all weak signal modes. So any QRM that may be tolerable to other people operating on other frequencies with perhaps stronger signals, the effect is going to be amplified further still. But what do we do about it retrospectively? I don't know. So yes, I agree with Ed, but possibly not using the exact words that he did.
Yeah, no problems at all. No problems at all. And last words on this one, Dan. Have we left you anything to say on this one?
Well, yeah, not too much. But one thing that sort of struck me is that maybe the IEEE should get involved in this and come up with standards, organize the people in the industry. I mean, this is what they do, right? Organize people in the industry and come up with some EMI standards for this. So, maybe they're already looking into that. I don't know, but seems to me that would be a useful thing for them to do.
I think you're right, Dan. I think you're right. But whatever happens, somebody's got to start doing something soon, because otherwise...
I actually, coming back on that, I agree with Dan. If we could get the standards in place and all future, I'd say by the time the standards get in, it's going to be at least a year or 2 years, but all future satellites should be built to be clean or screened or whatever, so they don't create even the lowest level of RFI. The existing satellites only have a life period of, 4 years, 5 years before they either burn up into the atmosphere or they're sent off into space, or however they're removed. So, over time it is fixable with that approach. But if nobody does anything, nothing will happen.
Very true. Very true. So let's hope it gets looked into. Right. Well, as Ed told me earlier, because I didn't go to the press release, the announcements at the start of Friedrichshafen, because I went one year, and the mayor of Friedrichshafen got up and he said 2 sentences in English and 20 minutes in German. Well, Ed understood him, and I probably should have learnt more German than I actually know. But this was announced in Friedrichshafen. There's a new N-class license for German amateurs. Ed, do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, okay. Well, normally your press meetings at the start of HamRadio Friedrichshafen are, generally welcome to Friedrichshafen, and we're going to have a good show, and that's about it. In this particular case, they also announced that the regulator had signed off on something that's been worked on for probably 2 years in proposals and counter proposals and so on, and that is to add an entry-level license in Germany. In the US, you have your technician, your technician, your general, and your extra. And in the UK, you have your foundation, intermediate, and full. And in Australia, foundation, standard, and advanced. So the idea of the 3-level model is not new. And indeed, Germany did have it many years ago. So they're trying to get a new entry level in. And that's been signed off now by the regulator. It will actually become available in exactly a year's time, so June the 21st, and the first exams be able to be taken to get that qualification will actually be at HamRadio, Friedrichshafen, next year, 2024. It's similar in many ways to some of the other foundation licenses, but more similar, I would say, to the old Class B license in the UK many, many years ago, that it's 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and 10 meters, and limited 10 watts. So what we're used to for the UK and Australia in the way of very limited privileges, but it will allow use of electronics. It will allow use of repeaters and remote stations, etc. So it's actually it's good to see that Germany is getting into the rule of 3 levels. The hope is that will bring more people into the hobby in Germany. Like in many countries, the numbers of amateurs is going down. So by adding this extra one, targeted a lot at the people that are in the hacker space at the moment, I would say. Get them on board, and then hopefully also get them to then work on getting for the higher level licenses as well. And hopefully it will be a good result for Germany with a lot more amateurs on the bands. And it might be worth me getting back onto 270 centimetres, because at the moment there's hardly anybody there. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, no problems at all, Ed. Well, I think it's a good move. If it does get more people on, great. It's always good. Edmund, what's your thoughts about it?
Well, the first thought that went through my head is that UK foundation licence holders can transmit 10 watts on 10 metres, 2 metres and 70 centimetres, and other bands as well, obviously. So does this mean there is scope, perhaps, maybe if they fill in a form or two? And I know that filling in forms is good business over in Germany, and bureaucracy, all that kind of thing. Is there any scope for UK and other countries' foundation licence operators to operate in Germany under some kind of reciprocal agreement, perhaps?
Funny you should raise that, Edmund, because that's the one point I didn't cover. Each of the 3 levels of licenses in Germany will then be conformant with the CEPT standards for what that licensee should know. And yes, that opens up that opportunity that all countries that have their licenses and their examinations conformant to the CEPT defined standards and actually sign up, if you like, to the agreements. Yes, in theory, well, today, the middle level licenses from several countries can indeed travel and operate in the other countries. I don't know of any at the lower level yet, but yes, this is part of what this is all about, at least across Europe and ideally across the world, to get the 3-level system compatible and then have the ability that a foundation licensee from the UK can go to Germany and operate on what the entry-level Class N license can in Germany. So that means even though in the UK your foundation can operate on, I think, 40 metres, 80 metres, whatever, he or she won't be able to do that, obviously, in Germany. They'll just get what the local country allows. But, of course, the reverse applies. So an N class coming from Germany and spending a holiday in the UK could then operate on the other bands because it's the equivalent license. So the answer is a long answer to a short story, but that is the direction this is meant to go, yes.
Right. I also think, or from memory, that a UK foundation licence and intermediate licence are not aligned with the CEPT, which is a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not just alignment, but it's also the regulator has got to sign up to say it's aligned. And the last time it was looked at for the intermediate, the foundation might be a bigger problem, I don't know, but the intermediate, there would need to be some changes to the syllabus, but not a lot, before it could be made compatible in the UK. My understanding is that the RSGB approached Ofcom about this, and they said, well, we'll put it on our list of things to do, which basically meant it's gone in the round bin in the corner.
Maybe.
Maybe.
A lot of changes happening. Maybe.
Yeah.
Be another.
Yeah, I mean, with the latest changes that have been agreed, that's a good sign that the Ofcom is indeed open to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more helpful to the amateur fraternity. So maybe it's something we're going to see in the future, that amateurs that don't have the full license may be able to travel to other countries and operate for up to 3 months on their license in that equivalent class in the other country. But it's going to take a while, of course. And some people would say it's not a good idea, because one of the benefits of going through all the exams and getting the full license is that you can then travel. And if that becomes possible at the intermediate level and the foundation level, then that's one less carrot for somebody to upgrade, I guess.
Yeah, no problems. Well, let's bring Caryn in on this one. Caryn, what's your thoughts on it?
Okay, I don't really have that much to add, Martin. I mean, I came into amateur radio as a tech, like everybody else, and that's the springboard for the upgrade. And I would hope that people who would get this new N-class license would similarly feel motivated to do the same, because the privileges would be that much greater. I don't know. Is travel, is the prospect of travel that much a factor for that many people that it would matter what class they have or not? I would guess, and again, just my own personal opinion, it has more to do with privilege on the air than the ability to travel. But again, here in the United States, if you go east or west on land, you're staying within the same country, so it's a little bit of a different landscape. But I was very happy to hear that the announcement was made and that the N class is going forward. So we'll see. Maybe some people will keep it, other people will use it as a launch pad, but time will certainly tell. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, certainly. And interestingly, when I took the exam in the UK, there was only a full license option. When I took the American one, I did all three on the same day, and man, that does your head in something rotten, doing all three in one day. But in all honesty, I might have the full license in the States, but I think I've only ever operated with 5 watts, which I could have on VHF and UHF, which I could have quite easily done with a technician license, or I could have quite easily done by just the SEP agreement and just putting a letter in front of my UK call sign. But once again, it's nice to know that these licensing things are happening. Dan, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I've always been a big proponent of having a novice class license. And 5 or 6 years ago, there was a lot of talk here about actually doing that, petitioning the FCC to reinstate a novice class license, something very easy to get. Somehow that proposal morphed into the changes that are still in process, as far as I know, actually making the tech test a little harder and giving them more privileges, which I never understood how that occurred, but that's what we've got here now. So anyway, I had a novice class license when I was a kid, and that it made it easy for me to get in the ham radio. And now, even we're talking about kids here, maybe mostly, but because adults can master the tech material, not without too much difficulty. But yeah, having a novice class license is a good thing. So I think this is a good move by Dark, and I forget the name of the regulatory agency, but yeah, good on them, as you say.
Dan, just a point for clarification for the listeners. A novice class license in Europe is the middle class license. So that's the equivalent of your general. The entry level is what we refer to as the bottom one. I know originally novice meant the simplest, but for whatever reason, in the CEPT terms, the novice is the middle license, the intermediate in the UK, or the general in the US. And yeah, it's good to get it all the same, but terminology is a little bit different. But we'll see what comes out of this.
Yeah, yep.
Well, at least people are discussing and things are happening. The hobby's not static, which is good.
Yeah, another thought I just had might throw in here is I hope that Dark, and I don't know how to say this exactly, but maybe organize some activities so that these folks can do something. Yeah, if you know what I mean. Like, okay, it's great to give them these privileges, which aren't that great, really, right? I mean, they're not that extensive. If no effort is expended to, get them to use those privileges, then nothing's going to happen, right? They'll buy HTs, they'll put them on the shelf, and batteries will go dead, and they'll never use the license. So it's something I think some Dark needs to set up some kind of program to encourage those folks to get on the air and do things.
Yeah, I keep wondering what you're talking about Dark for. Is that the internet, Dark Internet? Deutsches Amateur Radio Club, DARC, we refer to it by the letters usually because there is a group in Germany called Dark that has other meanings. Yeah, there is plans to do that, exactly that, to give them something to do. And one of the areas that seems to have spun some interest in getting this in place is actually high altitude ballooning, where they use 2 meters or 70 centimeters for the communications. And so, yeah, again, they're hoping that some of the people from the hacker space are gonna come in because they look to get something better from that. So maybe there's an overlap there. But you're absolutely right on anything that comes in new. If the National Society doesn't actually promote it and try and make it interesting, shall we say, what have you gained? But that being said, again, coming back, what they saw in Australia was by simply bringing in the foundation license, they got a higher influx, and that was without the National Society necessarily doing much. Local radio clubs really led the way there.
Okay, so that's good.
But somebody has to do something. I 100% agree with you, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
Well, that's been my biggest beef, guys, is in the nicest possible way, the RSGB did very well during the pandemic, and they changed the licensing system so people could take the exams remote, and they put thousands of people in the bottom, right? Our friends at Essex Hams, and when I've been talking to Pete Seppel, they've put hundreds and hundreds of people, and probably thousands, have got amateur radio licenses, right? What happens? The majority of them have just gone by the wayside because they've been bullied on air, and they've not got the help and support, so they've disappeared. So, we could go on forever on this one, but it's not down to the DARC, the RSGB, the WIA, the ARRL. It's down to us amateurs to welcome the new people into the hobby and assist them and help them rather than give them grief. It's a hobby. If you don't get the call sign right, or the order, or whatever, nobody's going to die. What's your problem? Help them become better operators. And that's me on my soapbox. I'm going to stop.
Martin, can I jump on your soapbox for a moment? I will not take up a lot of room, and I won't stay on it very long. Just on the notion of bullying, which I think is really important, and it, of course, crosses geographic lines, although, I've certainly heard enough of it here. in the States, but I've seen stories about it being an issue elsewhere. There's bullying, there's even gentle harassment of people. Oh, well, you just got your tech. Well, now we're going to make fun of you until you get your general. Or, well, you've only got your general. Well, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have your extra? Some of it is done in a gentle, kidding way, some of it not so much. But I think it just comes down to respecting the decisions of people. If you want to encourage someone to upgrade, don't do it by harassing them. Do it by saying, hey, if ever you want to bump up to the next level, let me know. I'll be happy to help you study. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents on that, because I think it's really important how you present to people and how you encourage people to do more, and we support one another. We're a community. I am stepping off your soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, no problems, Caryn. And the other thing I think is, like you say, is if somebody gets a foundation or a technician license, that's the first step on the run. Let them play, let them enjoy the hobby, let them get the feel, let them get comfortable. It's not a race to go from technician to advanced straight away. Or full license straight away. It's not a race. You know, some people will do it, but it's not a race. Let them enjoy the hobby. That's my feeling. Anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox and continue with the next news story. Right. Dan, this hit your mailbox just a few minutes before we went to go to record, so I'm going to get you to lead on this one. But commercial interests of penetrating high power allocation on the shortwave bands for the FCC's looking at. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read this whole petition. It's a very fairly lengthy petition, 103 pages. But I forget when we reported on this, but a year or two ago, I think it's been already. The FCC issued some experimental licenses to some commercial interests, and there was a lot of for HF operations, and there was a lot of speculation what this was all about. And as it turns out, it was stock traders wanting to use HF frequencies to, I guess, do stock trading. And the idea being that communications over HF, direct point-to-point communications over HF, took less time than going through the internet or satellite system. And that's true. And I don't understand all the ramifications personally, but the phrase here, time is money, and even sometimes on the order of milliseconds, will mean more money for the traders. It's a kind of an amazing thing when you think about it. So anyway, now they've gotten past the experimental stage apparently, and now they've actually petitioned the FCC to use some of the Part 90 frequencies in the 2 to 25 megahertz spectrum, portion of the spectrum, and apparently they want to run up to 20 kilowatts on these frequencies. And I was just been perusing the petition, and if nothing else, people should read the petition, because it's really it's very professionally done, and they use a lot of terminology in here that I think maybe hams could make use of. Like for example, they say that among other things, this will provide innovative use of these frequencies and further advance the state of the art and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of amusing to read, but apparently some of these frequencies are adjacent to ham bands and could theoretically cause some interference to ham radio communications. So I guess we'll just have to see about that and see how this petition goes. But yeah, the bottom line here is that commercial interest in HF is not dead, and we shouldn't take our bands for granted, even in the HF portions. So that's certainly one takeaway of all this.
Yeah, that's good. And they're not intending to transmitting our bands. I would suggest you'd probably be in the shortwave broadcast bands. But interesting. Caryn, none of us have had time to read this fully, but any thoughts on this one?
Yes, thank you. No, I haven't had time to read it fully either. I looked for a couple of keywords as I perused it, and I did see that there was, at least in principle, a commitment to not having any impact on any of the parts of the band where amateur radio has primary standing. People are going to read this, and their reaction is going to be instant. They're going to think the very worst. They're going to think, they're coming for our frequencies. They're coming to take away our HF frequencies. Well, these folks who, clearly they're acting in their own self-interest. That's why the committee was formed. But they are on record in their proposal as committing to not affecting amateur radio. And I think people commenting on this need to let the FCC know, of course, that that is not going to happen under our watch. And people should be vocal about it, and people should say, yeah, hold their feet to the fire about this. Agreed. Time is of the essence when you're doing trading, and the faster the better. It's amazing how blazingly fast these trades sometimes have to go. Fractions and fractions and fractions of a second can mean millions and millions. But I don't think, at least right now, this is even moderately targeting amateur radio. Could there be unintentional problems? Yes, and those should be built in too. Those should be built into any approvals that happen. Right now, it's just at the petition status. Let's keep it on our radar and let's see where it goes. But I don't think we should ever assume just because they say that they're not going after our bands. And I'm sure they don't mean to, but I would just say watch it. I would just say watch it because sometimes things are not always what they seem. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have to monitor and make sure and be ready to fight to keep our bands if need be. Edmund, what's your thoughts?
Well, this kind of thing goes on already. There's a video on the excellent Ringway Manchester channel, which belongs to Lewis Mike 3 Hotel Yankee. I'm trying to find it, and I can't lay my hand on it at the moment, and I can't remember the exact title either, helpfully. But I would say he's published it in the last 6 to 12 months. And it includes footage of a very large log periodic antenna that is somewhere in England and somewhere in the south of England, I think, from memory, that's being used for this very purpose. So I'm not aware of it causing a major problem, although obviously we do have to be mindful that activities outside of the amateur bands today could eventually try to encroach on the amateur bands in the future. I just hope that they're frequency agile to an extent, because ever since February 2022, there's been an awful lot more instances of the Russian container over the horizon radar, which can pop up pretty much anywhere. It's often on or near the 40-meter band. I have heard it down on the trawler band between 2 and 3 megahertz. And I've heard it as high as the 13-meter broadcast band. So it's always a massive signal. So if these people are using HF radio for this purpose, and suddenly they have a whacking great signal coming out of Russia that's 5 and 9 plus 40 dB on top of them, it could cause a few problems, Martin.
Yeah, you can always get interference problems, but I'm sure they'll have multiple frequencies they'll be able to use. Ed, last words on this one?
Yeah, I've been trying to find a way to actually read the document, but it's geo-locked. You can't get to it outside of the US. Interestingly, it is actually a document that was filed on the 28th of April this year. So it's a while ago. But yeah, and one technical thought on it is, why not put a data channel on the side of the broadcast station transmitter, existing broadcast station transmitters, and just set up new receive stations. Use what's already there. So if you've got a 300, 600 kilowatt AM transmitter somewhere, Wolfeldon, is it, in England? I can't pronounce it right. Or Vienna in Austria, or there's a couple in Germany, etc. These stations can get around the world at any time of day or night by switching to the appropriate bands. And, if somebody wants a data channel, why not use an existing one rather than going off to look and try and find new frequencies? But in any case, that's something they'll have to sort out, because this application, I'm guessing, even though, Edmund, you say there's something happening in the south of England, this application is to the FCC, so I'm expecting this is only within the US. But of course, it would make a lot of sense to have the New York stock market connected to the Frankfurt, connected to the London, etc., etc. So it would make a lot more sense if this was international. We'll see what happens, see what comes, and let's just hope they aren't at the image frequency of something in an amateur band, or a multiple of the harmonic of their signal. If they're running, what did they say, 20 kilowatts or something, if they're getting 200 watts out on the third harmonic, and that happens to be in the amateur band, we'll hear it. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah. Well, initially, as you say, this is for the FCC, so it'll be for the US. And for somebody who has to calibrate broadcast transmitters at the moment, we're forever getting them down to the level where they're acceptable. So there'll always be harmonics, but you have to get them down really, really low. And normally it's 80 dB down. So quite an interesting one. Anyway, that's concludes our news stories. We're running long tonight, so this could be a 3-hour episode, guys, if you're continuing to listen past this point. I'm going to ask what the guys have been up to since our last episode. We always start with ladies first, though, Caryn.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I'll keep this short. Had a lot going on, but I can cover a lot of area very quickly. Finished up the 13 colonies. I was one of the activators for K2A, the New York colony. Had a great time. Had a really great time with that. Did half of it sideband and the other half in CW. And as much as I love being able to talk to people when they answer my call, it was exceptional fun this year adding CW to the mix. And I got some emails from people after the event. They had made contact and they appreciated being able to get in the log for the 13 colonies on CW. The big excitement here, too, is probably the little excitement. The little excitement is a brand new SP4 POTA paddle, really tiny little thing from Morse, CW Morse.us, which I wanted to upgrade my POTA performance in the wild when I go out in the field. The straight key just wasn't doing it for me anymore. So on the recommendation of a friend, I picked up this little key, and today, in fact, took it out for a super quick activation of a park, and I'm completely sold on using paddles now rather than straight key for POTA, although I do love the straight key. I'm not going to let my straight keys collect dust. I'm still in Straight Key Century Club. I love doing things the old-fashioned way, but looking forward to taking it with me. It's fairly lightweight and is really making POTA even more fun. If anyone hasn't tried POTA, I encourage you to get out there and get under the trees or get out there in the field and enjoy. Nothing much else. I'm going to move things along a little bit and send it back to you, Martin, so we can hear from everyone else.
Yeah, fine business, Caryn. I wasn't hurrying you up. Yeah, as I say, it's going to be a long one. Nothing we can do about it. But it sounds like you've been having fun anyway, and that's the most important thing. Dan, what have you been up to?
Well, I tell you, I've been doing POTA myself. We have a little group here. We go out, at least once a week. And I've been using a spider beam fiberglass pole to support my antenna and come up with a kind of a unique way to set it up and quickly. And it's not maybe the optimum solution, but like if we had some really stiff winds, it might not be the greatest. But it worked great last time, and yeah, that's that. It's a lot of having fun. I just looked up that key, Caryn, and that does look like a nice little key. I actually just haul out my big old Kent, my Kent TP1, and use that on POTA activations. It's just it's a real workhorse for me. And the other thing is, I finally finished the print version of my general class study guide, so now that's available on Amazon. So that's it. Back to you.
Yeah, it's a lot of work writing those books, Dan. So, yeah, my only regret was not knowing you when I took my American exams, because they would have probably helped. But very good, all your books are too. Edmund, what have you been up to?
Well, I watched a YouTube video. Ed, the other Ed on this podcast, mentioned Wooferton. I think that's how it's pronounced. And a few days before this podcast was released, episode 29 of the TX Factor was released. Now, it's been at least a year since episode 28, and I think there was a year gap between that and episode 27. So I rather feared that the TX Factor had completely ground to a halt. But they've released episode 29, which runs to nearly an hour, but it's well worth a watch. Not only do they put the ICOM IC905 through its paces, which I found very interesting because although I'm not personally active on any bands higher in frequency than 430 megahertz, nevertheless I do have an interest in microwaves. So they put that through its paces, but then they also, in the second half of the edition, visited the Wooferton transmitter site and had a tour and a very in-depth look at the antenna system that they've got there and the transmitters and how it all works. And it's worth watching because Wooferton is now the only remaining HF broadcast facility left in the United Kingdom. They mentioned in that episode. So I've been watching YouTube videos. In terms of being on the air, I activated Littlehampton Beacon for the RSGB's Beacon Connect project using the call sign Golf Bravo 23 Bravo Lima Hotel. I've written a write-up for Radcom, which hopefully they will publish at some point. I've done a YouTube video on my YouTube channel. I'll stick a link to that into the ICQPodcast Facebook group. And the two big things from that is that, number one, in some circumstances, 70 centimetres can work better than 2 metres over an obstructed path, because although the path loss is higher, you can get more gain using physically smaller antennas. And number two, the thing about saltwater, the sea being nature's HF amplifier, even if you know it's true in your head, and even if you believe it's true, which it is, knowing it is one thing, actually going and doing it and seeing it in action is something else altogether. So I had loads of pile-ups, mainly because one end of my inverted V SOTA beams linked dipole, held up by a spider beams mast, incidentally, for people who like those. One end of that was virtually dipping in the English Channel at some points until the tide started to go out. So overall, it was very successful. And I seem to have done rather a lot of radio in the last month or two, Martin, of one kind or another. So I'm planning over the next few weeks not to do very much at all.
Well, don't do that. You have to enjoy yourself, Edmund, but it does sound like you've been having fun.
Oh, one little thing I'll add, and you can chop this out if you like, because I know we're going long. You mentioned earlier about patchy mobile phone coverage.
Yeah.
That topic was brought up in the House of Commons during Prime Minister's questions this lunchtime. I was working from home today, so whilst I was making my sandwich, I stuck BBC Radio 5 Live on. who take Prime Minister's questions live each Wednesday. And an MP from somewhere in North Norfolk, and I didn't catch his name, and I don't know exactly where his constituency is. He mentioned that a mobile phone mast has been constructed, which is really important because it's going to provide coverage to an area of the Norfolk Broads where it's currently very patchy coverage, but the operator can't switch it on until at least well into August because some seagulls are nesting on the transmitter structure and they're a protected species, so they can't hoof them off. And this chap, this MP, said, we know that that's the law regarding wildlife and nature, but there's a public safety problem here. Can Natural England, or whatever their correct name is, look at this again and maybe exercise some common sense, quote unquote, his words, not mine. And the Deputy PM, Oliver Dowden, basically said, okay, we'll look into it and talk to the relevant people. But it's a good reminder, if it was needed, that despite mobile phone coverage being, I think it's 99 point something percent, isn't it? That's 99% of the population, not 99% of the geographical area of the UK. So there are still black spots mobile phone wise. So if you go sailing on the Norfolk Broads, don't rely on a mobile phone. Take your amateur radio handheld with you. And if you've got a VHF marine radio, take that with you as well. Because it's either channel 72 or 74, I can't remember. There's one of them that's very much used on inland waterways. So yeah, I'd forgotten about that until you mentioned patchy mobile phone coverage a while back, Martin. If you're going to somewhere semi-rural like the Norfolk Broads, don't rely on your mobile phone. Take radio gear with you. You know it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, as I say, you live about 50 miles south of me. I can drive down. I could probably talk to you all the way down on a mobile phone, but the data is very patchy, and that's the other thing. Often you'll have voice coverage but no data. Anyway, let's move on. Ed, what have you been up to?
Well, like several of the team, I was, of course, at Friedrichshafen for HamRadio 2023, and it was great meeting up with the members of our team in ICQ, and also with some faces I hadn't seen for a few years. And it's always nice to have it as a social thing as well. Met up with Andrew, ZL3DW out of New Zealand. Also Karsten, who I, funnily enough, worked alongside at WRTC 2018. So this links back to our first story today. He's also Radio Amateur of the Year from Dayton. So he's been having a busy time, as has Emil, DL8JJ, who I know we also got an interview with. And it was just great meeting people that I hadn't seen for a while, and a nice feeling that they're all fit and well and everything else after the pandemic. And I think most people have now accepted that we've put the pandemic behind us and time to carry on. So that was very positive. Apart from that, what have I been doing? Well, you know me, antenna projects as always. I'm still working on the switchable 20-meter wire beam, and I also got myself an ultra small vertical antenna that I'm going to use with the G106 pack. So antennas. What will I be doing, however, tomorrow, following the storms we had last night? I would be putting my 40-meter full wave loop antenna back up because it came down in the storms, the hail, the rain, the 80 to 90 kilometer an hour winds. So antenna work is not always so pleasing when Mother Nature decides she doesn't like something you've put up. But apart from that, all fitting well, which is the main thing. So back to you, Martin.
Yeah, well, that's good news. Well, very quickly from my point of view, this is an announcement rather than what I've been up to. The dates for Friedrichshafen next year are the 28th to the 30th of June. For anybody who wants to go there, it's well worth a trip. We arrived home, well, we've had a problem in the house, and you probably heard me talk about the electric problem. Turned out to be far worse than that. Turned out to be a burst pipe under the front doorstep that was leaking water into the house. And when I got home from Germany and had the floorboards up looking for the electrical fault, I found a pond under my house. So, yeah, we had to get that fixed. Got a plumber out. They managed to fix the leak. It's all drained away, only to find that for the last 42 years I've lived here, there's been a live cable under the floor. Well, they're always, most of them are live, but this one was just a one length of cable wrapped in insulating tape and left on the ground. Now, when I looked at it, I thought that's going to be live because I just had a gut feel, and sure enough, it was live. So in the end, I hooked it out and dealt with it. I've got to find I've made it safe at the moment, but I've got to find the other end to disconnect it, which means I've got to have the rest of the ground floor carpets and floorboards up looking for this problem. But that's my problem, and it'll be done fairly soon. Lots of videos gone out from us, which we're recording freaks of them. Plus, there's also a presentation I did at HamSCI Colin's managed to release, plus other bits and pieces that are going through now, and the WRTC 2026 video as well. Guys, if you live in the UK, please, 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 and I can't emphasise this enough, answer the Ofcom consultation document on amateur radio licensing. Not everybody will be happy on every subject. I'll give you that some things I would prefer weren't happening, but across the board, this is very positive. But let's not be like other years when there was only half a dozen people applied to the power line problem or whatever. This is down to us being given a lot of privilege. I think, it's 17 questions. You can answer them anonymously. They ask you if on each question, do you want this public or anonymous? So you don't even have to put your head above the parapet, but answer the questions, please. It only takes about 10 minutes. That's where I'm going to get off my soapbox on. So all in all, I think we've all been pretty busy. Well, me not so much with radio, but once I get the house back together, the radio's going to be attacked with vengeance. Hi. Right, let's move on to the next part of the podcast. But before I do, let's thank the guys for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Dan Romanchik KB6NU.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I'd like to thank Caryn Eve Murray KD2GUT.
Always fun, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks, Caryn. I'd like to thank Mr. Edmund Spicer M0MMG.
Thanks, Martin.
No probs. And last but not least, Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP.
Thanks a lot, Martin, and thanks everybody for being there. Been a great show again.
I think so. So I say 73, guys, and we'll move on. 73.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now we take a look at the news in brief for me, Colin M6BRY. WRTC 2022 has just been completed in Italy, and it's been announced that the team of Ukrainians, Yaroslav Olenik, Uniform Whiskey 7 Lima Lima, and Yuri Onopuk, UT4UZ, showed the best results and won gold for Ukraine. So I say congratulations to the two-man team that operated non-stop for 24 hours in the competition, and as they scored the biggest result going there. WRTC 2026, as we've been announcing this week and in earlier on in the show, will take place in the UK, and there'll be a lot more information coming out about this over the coming months. So keep us an ear out for the next event that will be happening in the United Kingdom. The HamSCI Festival of Eclipse Ionospheric Science will occur on the 14th of October to the 8th of April next year during a spectacular North American solar eclipses. So lots of notable events be going on. A solar eclipse QSO party, the Gladstone Signal Spotting Challenge, a time delay arrival event, and also measuring Doppler events as well. So lots of activities taking place over the coming months. We'll put a link to this on the ICQ podcast homepage so you can find out more information and plan your activities for that event starting the 14th of October. And now we head over to our features episode, where we conclude our roundup from Felix Sharvin, HamRadio 2023, and some interesting interviews here that might whet your appetite to expand your amateur radio hobby. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast. So I'm at Felix Sharvin. I've met up with Emil. I spoke to Emil, about 6 weeks ago before you went to Rockall.
Yeah.
And we featured you on the podcast of going there.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it and did you achieve your goals?
I enjoyed so much. It was one of the biggest happiness that I had it in the last time. Now it takes the time to realize everything, how it was. But from day to day, from every single moment to single moment, they just come more and more happiness that we really done it. We made it, That was a dream, and every single step was difficult, was very difficult, but we managed, and the next step, and manage, and the next step, until we sit there and start to work. The first QSOs, the second, the third, thousands, 2,000, 3,000, 600, and at the end, after 52 hours, we done 7,227 QSOs. It was so big project, so much fear, so much thinking, so much highs and deeps, and now it's reality. I'm still there, I'm still alive. It was really risky situations there, but I'm still alive and I can talk about this great experience now.
It's one of those experiences in life that you wanted to do.
One of the biggest experiences in the life, yeah.
And you've now done it. So, with so many contacts in such a short time, did you get any sleep at all at any time?
No, I sleep around about 2.5, 3 hours. I don't know exactly how, because we started in the middle of the night and 52 hours, it was just on the air time, but the time before and the time after we had perhaps 24 hours, and after the 24 hours that we not sleep, it was something like 4.5 days without any sleep or something like this, or 2.5, 3 hours. It was just running and doing something and make QSOs, prepare equipment, prepare camp, climbing and so on. It was really an amazing thing.
Yeah. Well, you're a lot younger than me, but I remember years ago when I was a field service engineer travelling all over the UK, the adrenaline, once you get the adrenaline going, you can stay awake for ages, can't you? You're just focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, that was a focus with 1,000% focus of this step now. And after that, manage then 1,000% concentrated and manage the next step. I mean, really, every single step until to come there, to reach the island. 2 times I fall in the water, try again, fall in the water, try again. The third time it was lucky, and then manage the first 5 to 6 steps, find the hole, find the ledge, secure, make a ropes, take another equipment over the next step, climb the next 2 meters, secure the there, put the piton, put the friends, go with the ropes, take the Nobi, take the equipment there, and so on. Every single step until to the summit. Secure the summit down, take the camp over there to be safe. Every guys that will be safe, nothing. And after that, on the top, when we was 3 person then, I say, okay, the next step. Now we need all stuff to come up and pull up, and we spent around about 8 hours to take all our stuff from the main boat over there. Perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 kilograms we put it over there. And then finally, like I told the first time, finally it's something like the point of the lucky just sit on the radio and start to make QSOs. That was really a long way, but with the first QSO, that was the happiness to say, yes, now we on this point, we come on this point to activate this island, this rare island, the most rare island, it was really happiness.
So, what a lot of people won't understand, and you just explained it very well, the amount of sheer effort once you arrived at Rockall, and there was a lot of work before you got there, but once you arrived there, getting onto Rockall and climbing up to the top, because it's not just to get on and walk up, guys. Emil has explained you have to climb, you have to carry all your gear up there. So when you get to the top, there's nothing there really, is there?
That was amazing.
No trees,
it was amazing. It was a other world. It was really like you go on the other planet, because when I go from the step side over there and the first looking on this ledge, it was completely white from the bird sheet, and so it was so many birds there, but it was like a completely other planet. And say, now I'm here. And after I put the first rope and secure, from minutes to minutes, it was the feeling just come, hey, this is your home for the next days. You should prepare so best as you can, that you can feel perfect, that you can feel well. And with every single step and moment that we can luggage over there, our tent, and put all together, at the end, it was my home. I was completely comfortable there. I say, hey, I have here tent, my sleeping bag, my radio station, this is my sitting place, everything arranged, not so far from me, sit there and make QSOs. And I said, this is my home. Nothing others. It was so amazing to looking outside, to see from outside. Thank you. To see the world over there from 20 meters up, to see the ocean, all that stuff, and see there is nothing. There is just water. It's nothing. There is no ship. There is nothing. It's just completely wild place, and you've seen all 360 degrees is just water, and the only single that was the birds, and so some whales, and you see you're middle of the nature. You are part of the nature, because the birds also they don't know I'm a human. They just sit there completely cool, no fear, nothing. And I saw I'm also something like this. I'm also like a bird, but a human. But you are a part of the nature. You know, it was amazing feeling, really amazing feeling.
Sounds absolutely brilliant. Now I know you took Nobby with you.
Yeah.
Did he have as much fun as you?
Yeah. Nobby is a great guy. Cam is a great guy. It's all our team. It was one of the best, I can say at the moment, the best team that I had it, because all other guys, we was 9 persons, work all together. It's really hard all together to support each other. You know, normally we had 4-hour shifts to go up and you make sailing, go down 4 hours, sleep, go 4 hours. And the last day, normally I had the shift until from 0 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning that we arrived the island.
Yeah.
And the people just come to the team and say, you're a lucky man, we decide that you go now and sleep for the night, because tomorrow is your day. You're the climber, you're the main guy that you can secure and make all that's possible. It was really amazing. I had a tear in my eye, because I said, that's a great team, you know, support each other. Everybody was cool, was really in so different situation, and the people are help each other. and that was the key to success. Really great, really.
If you've got a great team, it makes life a lot more enjoyable, doesn't it? So that's a good one. So I'm not going to hold you too long because there are lots of people trying to get hold of you today, and I've been lucky to get you. Are you planning to do the expedition?
Yeah. Now come again and again new dreams.
Yeah.
What happened, I don't know, but I'm open for the adventures. I don't looking for adventures. My head and my mind is open for adventures. And when I see something like Rocco or similar like Rocco, that I say, wow, it seems to be impossible. Yeah. And you start to work in your mind, in your head, and say, of course, okay, perhaps it's difficult, but perhaps, and then start to work, start to be material to see what you need, how you can manage it. Then it's born a new project, it's born something bigger, and I'm sure the next one will come.
I'm sure you will. Now, before we finish, if somebody wanted to contact you, and I probably asked you this before, what website would they look for you?
So the website, what we have it's rockleexpert.com. We need, of course, more support at this moment, because we need to take a camp in a couple of days. So after 20-25 days from the Rockle there, we need to collect, of course, money for the charity that is a social project from the camp, but it's also a project also of us, because we are a team and we work it also together. If the people have the opportunity, just give us a donation. We should pay, of course, all that stuff with the engine, with the boat and so on. There is a keep open something to do, but it will be a great.
Yeah. One last question before I thank you. Did you leave anything behind, like Emil was here on the rock? Did you leave that?
I leave my head there, but I put on 3 points pitons. 3 pitons and 1 friend is from me there. And I tell, okay, I'm sure they will be stay for a long time, and the people, the next expedition, or people just leaving or just arrived he will find these pitons, and this is something to secure the way on this rock. And this is a part for me, but also for the next people that want to reach this rock there.
Well, that sounds like fun. Listen, Emma, I know you're busy. I'm going to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Enjoy yourself.
I enjoy the people like you, because I won't say as the last, it's not just me, just not the team. The HamRadio, the fascination is the both side. I have so much fun, and I was so lucky because we had both sides. We was there, and I love it. I enjoyed so much this pile-up, because the pile-up was the thankful to me to say, hey guy, you are there, and we want to work you. We want to make a contact with you. And so some people say to me, Emil, we was wait of you 18 years just for this single moment. Couple of people took the holidays for 3 days that he want to work with us and spend so much time, that all that was happen is both sides is more important thing. It's a great.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, have a great show.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank you very
life
much.
to
Thank
the
you.
full, and
Thank you
we'll
very
speak
much.
again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I'm wandering around the floor at Friedrichshafen, and I come across an interesting sign. And it was interesting to me because it said Black Sheep Pub, Ham Radio Group. Well, a pub and ham radio. Then it said UK, so I wandered across to talk to this nice gentleman who's an Italian. And he's going to tell us all about it. But it's great. He's got a great smile on his face. Tell us who you are and about the Black Sheep Group.
Okay, first of all, thank you for coming. Yes, I am Italian, as you said, but I'm living in Czech Republic. So the story of the group, it's really funny because we were joining the digital world and ham radio world, and we found out that people are really sometimes they're really how you say, like sheriff and something like that. So at that time we wanted and we decided to have our room where we can talk easily and freely about everything. And so my friend G0BUS, which is Italian too, but living in England, decided with me to have the idea to set up this pub. We call it pub because, figuring the room where people come in and talk freely, and we said, okay, because I'm living in Czech Republic, I said, yes, it could be a pub because, we can serve good beer there. So, and that's why we just rise up with this name. And most of the members are expat, so they're living outside of the Italy. So we have Italians, but not only. We had also English people from Australia, from USA, all over the world. And it's funny because of the, let's say, the earth, the roundness of the earth. So we have always somebody anytime talking into this room. So it's a 24 hours pub, you know what I mean? So it's great.
Well, that sounds great. And just for those of you, obviously I'm not doing video, but this gentleman's got a great smile on his face. He's obviously enjoying himself. And Ham Radio is all about being sociable. As a group, we're all sociable people. So it sounds like you got a really good deal going.
Oh, yes. We are open mind, first of all. We also give a welcome to anybody. We have a Facebook page where people can sign in, and so they're welcome. And of course, we use also this opportunity to be in this international HamRadio mess to meet people and to join other people, other members, other friends. That's our aim, and we got it.
Yeah, that certainly works good for me. So, the Black Sheep Pub, it's a Ham Radio group. The Black Sheep Pub's internet address is https://www.theblacksheep.uk. Anything else you'd like to tell us before we close up?
Well, my hope, and I say to everyone, you can join us, have a nice talk with us, and become friends. This is the real scope, the real aim of being radio amateur.
Certainly is. Listen, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful Friedrichshafen, and maybe we'll catch up with you another year.
Thank you very much, sure.
The ICQ Podcast. Come for a moment. Stay for an hour.
Okay, well, we're here again. It's Friedrichshafen 2023. I'm joined by Bob Inderbitzen from the ARRL.
Thank you,
How
Chris.
How you doing, Bob?
Very good. It's nice to see you here again.
I'm here again for another year. I'm here again.
Ham Radio in Germany.
Indeed.
Or in Europe.
Yeah, so you were saying to me earlier that you get out quite a lot around the States, not so much around the rest of the world. So this must be one of your further distances you travel to.
Yeah, the Ham Radio convention here ends up being a nice setup for connecting with many other society representatives, other associations, and ARRL members around Europe and even around the world come to Friedrichshafen.
Yeah, and I've just signed the book because I'm a member as well, so that's good.
That's right, yes, thank you. Yeah, we have lots of guests who've been coming by.
Excellent. So what's been happening in the last year then, Bob, of interest within the ARRL?
So ARRL has a new learning center platform. It's a hub of educational content for members. One of the things we've identified in amateur radio is that not everyone has a mentor, not everyone has a helping hand through a local radio club. So we've invested in a significant amount of content to help people with their first project build, their first operating on the air, understanding HF digital, all the different aspects of amateur radio that are interesting are available in our learning hub.
Are these is this video content or PDFs?
Video, PDFs, multimedia experience. But the idea here is that someone could digest small amounts of content and learn something new in amateur radio, and then we can provide that education sort of asynchronously. They can do it when they want to.
When they consume it when they're ready. Okay.
Yes.
That's interesting. So certainly in the UK, we've had quite a lot of people that have joined the hobby over lockdown that maybe aren't members of clubs, and we're finding people are joining that have perhaps haven't had that experience. So actually, I think that's a good idea, having that online method of doing that is perhaps a great thing. You mentioned to me earlier that the theme of the event this weekend is actually STEM.
Yes,
it's a different
I think
acronym, isn't it?
Germans use an acronym called MINT.
MINT,
Sounds very good. And for us, it's STEM, but they're the same things. It's science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yeah.
And it's young people using amateur radio. For us, young people using amateur radio as the breadboard for understanding wireless technology. So we're not selling amateur radio on its own merit. We're selling amateur radio as an underpinning to learn wireless communications.
Okay. Interesting.
Because the world needs a lot more young people who pursue careers in radio technology and radio communications.
Absolutely. I suppose, look at technology. There's a huge amount of RF technology that's very new, and think about satellite communications and mobile communications. All that is RF based. It may not be amateur radio.
That's right. Even a device like our own cell phone is packed with radios, but only a few people really know about the technology that drives these. And we could import that technology, including the development, from other countries. But in the United States, we want to be a country that also encourages young people to become those next developers, those next engineers.
And we need those people, because when we've retired, or when set people doing that have retired, we need to replace them, and we need people that have got that knowledge. And interestingly, it's certainly in my part of the world, so many folks that you talk to in the hobby do it as a career. It's not just a hobby, they actually work in RF, various different types, as their day job.
Yeah.
And then they do it as a hobby as well.
Amateur radio is a connecting hobby, and for many ham radio operators my age, when I ask at a radio club meeting, how many of you got your career because of amateur radio? It opens doors. It provides opportunities for career opportunities and education. Another area that we're really working hard at is our networking of college radio clubs. We have a very vibrant network of the next generation of hams already active in their universities.
That's good. Yeah, I can see that being very good. I think there's similar things happening in the UK as well, with the society, the RSGB, are doing something similar, trying to hook into the and support those clubs and give them what they need to be able to
vibrant
to
clubs and keeping the eye on what does it take to not just make licensees but make people hams be active in amateur radio.
And I think you were also saying to me earlier about that there's a tie-in between other hobbies, so not just amateur radio. There's lots of radio communications in other hobbies that we can perhaps work with as well.
We call these like-minded communities, and we see these all the time in amateur radio. People who are attracted to different radio services like GMRS, pilots and aviation enthusiasts. There's a lot of crossover with amateur radio. In fact, some people get their pilot's license and their amateur radio license and find a great connection between the two services, or two hobbies. A number of women who get their pilot's licenses have told us that amateur radio gives them a chance to practice being on the air, talking to the air traffic control.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's funny, actually, just thinking from my own personal experience at our club, we have people that have joined because they were involved with off-road driving of four-wheel drive vehicles, so they use radio for that, and they're looking for a better way to communicate. We had people that do radio control aircraft. So actually, flying them remotely.
Everything is more fun with radio.
Exactly.
And when you know something about radio, it often furthers that additional effort in the community.
Yeah, it does, because you suddenly realise how the thing actually works.
That's right.
And you can improve on it. And
That's right. Drone flying.
Excellent. So look, Bob. Obviously, it's like you've had a very busy couple of days here.
It's been a great time here. It's like meeting old friends every year in Germany, and the ARL booth has been very busy. Many people signing up to renew their membership. Our number one question has been, should ARL continue to be here in Germany? And everyone says, well, yes, you have a product review column and a laboratory and a regulatory advocacy arm that really makes amateur radio, and not to mention radio sport, programs like DXCC and Logbook of the World. And so we're encouraged by the number of people that are glad to see we're here.
Excellent. And do you find many folks, that I remember, as I was saying earlier, I'm obviously not in the US, I get my magazines via the app.
Yes.
Do you find many people do that, especially the international members?
Interestingly, I would say it's split right down the middle. There's some people whose reading preference is digital, and so they'll save a little bit of money by not having to. But over here, a lot of people like getting their printed copy of QST, and they bring it to their club meetings, and they like to show it off.
I'll be honest with you. So the reason I've got the online version is because I've got an iPad.
It's very easy to have everything there.
And also it means I haven't got these stacks of magazines that just grow around the house.
Exactly.
Which some people might like. And,
right.
But,
so QSC is alive and well, but for some people it's digital now.
Absolutely. And I think that's the way things are starting to move.
That's the future of reading probably for many people.
Absolutely. So Bob, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, I would say if you haven't ever been to this convention, put it on your calendar for next year.
Yeah.
This is a great opportunity again to meet many of the people that we talked to on the air.
Yeah,
in a large grand convention.
Yeah, because you get to see people you maybe seen the previous years, and it's like, I haven't seen you for
some of those rare ones that do the expeditions will come to this event and shake hands with all the people that they worked. And so get to Friedrichshafen for Ham Radio in 2024, and maybe we'll see you at one of the Ham Radio conventions in the United States.
Perfect. So Bob, if people want more information about the ARRL, where would they go to?
They should visit www.arrl.org.
Perfect. Bob,
thank
you very much. We'll see you in a year's time.
We appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Cheers.
Well, still at Friedrichshafen, I'm here on the floor. I've managed to nail Don Field's foot to the floor, G3XTT. I've known Don a long time and we have great fun. But I've been trying to find him all weekend. Every time I see him, he disappears and changes his shirt to a different colour. But Don, how are you doing? Good to catch up with you.
No, I'm very fine indeed, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'll tell you why I'm delighted to be here, because last year I got to the bottom of the aircraft steps and they cancelled my flight, so I never arrived. So I'm delighted to be back at Friedrichshafen after 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's been a few years since I've been here. I know some of the team have been here, but it is interesting. It's not as busy as I remember it 5 years ago, but I suppose it's a recovery after the COVID, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm told there's more here than last year, but we're missing Yaesu, we're missing Wemo, of course, who are the biggest retailer in Europe, and guess what? We're missing the RSGB. No stand here this year.
Yeah, that was a big disappointment to a lot of people, is that the RSGB weren't here this year. I have spoken to them. We have put the point to them, and not on the interview, but we put the point to them very, very heavily, and I think they understand that it wasn't the best movie they ever made.
No, I think that's probably true. We've ended up on the CDXC stand collecting a whole lot of QSL cards that people were hoping to drop off at the RSGB stand for the Bureau. Anyway, we've sorted that one out and they're going to pick them up from us once we've got them back to the UK.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we all work together in fairness and help each other. But Don, what have you been up to outside of work? Because I know what you do for a living, but what have you been up to outside of work in, say, the last few months?
Oh, you've been reading some of my posts, haven't you? I've taken on a little role as a guide at Wells Cathedral, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. It's a wonderful building, and it's given me the opportunity to learn a lot more about it, to delve into medieval history. I would never have believed it of myself.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, Don, and it is interesting, when you go to some of these places, it does sort of engage your mind far more. I mean, last year we did the Giant's Causeway, which is somewhere I wanted to go, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Mrs. B seems to think, it's just a pile of rocks, isn't it? No, it's interesting, but these buildings have history, like you say, and it must be really good talking to the public.
Yeah, well, it is, and I spend a lot of my time sitting at home in my home office with a computer working on PW. I very, very rarely go and see the publishers because they're at the other end of the country, and I don't need to as long as I've got a decent internet connection. So that's the nice thing about this, is I get out, I meet people, as you say, members of the public. Funnily enough, earlier in the year they were mainly local people. Now we're getting, over the summer, an international audience. I've had Australians, Canadians, Americans, you name it. And it's absolutely fascinating. And of course, yes, you're right, the building was built 800 years ago and has a massive amount of history. And I just find it so interesting.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. And working from home, I try to avoid that because I do like the social interaction. I'm a chatterbox, I'm sorry, but I am. And I think I would lose it a bit working from home.
Well, yeah, and that's why I say I engage with the local community. In the village, I play badminton once a week. That got me, whether I wanted it or not, a role as a trustee of the village hall. later this year I'm going to be chairman of the trustees of the village hall, because that's the way things work. But there's a lot going on locally. Our hall is used every day for one thing or another. It's a very lively village, and we're delighted to be there. We've been there almost 4 years now.
Yeah, well, I remember you moving, and they always say, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, because they'll get it done. And you got a smile on your face. So, you're the editor of Practical Wireless as well. We haven't talked much about radio up until now. But what else have you got any plans radio-wise in the next few months?
Yeah, yes, I'm editor of Practical Wireless, almost 10 years now, believe it or not. I don't know where the time's gone. I'm wearing another hat here as president of CDXC, so that's why we're sitting having this interview on the CDXC stand. Otherwise, I don't know is the answer. We were hoping to do an expedition to the Pacific, we being what used to be called the 6Gs. We've done a few trips now. We were hoping to do that earlier in the year, but after COVID, and we've all recovered our lives, but we're all doing different things, and trying to coordinate has been quite difficult. So watch this space. We still want to do something. And I've also been weighing up while I've been here where I'm going in the autumn for the CQ Worldwide contest. And I've got 3 possibilities now for the CW one. So that's better than having no possibilities. I need to make some decisions.
Yeah, certainly is. And as I say, there's some nice things going on around the world, and people are starting, as you say, to get your life back together. But most of us have got now a full diary on other things, so we've got to then release things so we can do radio. I spoke to Emil, who went to the Rock Hall earlier today. I interviewed him about 6 weeks ago before he went, and I've interviewed him today to tell us about other things. But he's so passionate about what he's done, and I know you are, and some of the things you've done in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic achievement. When you think about the problems the recent Bouvet Island expedition had, getting people and equipment ashore, and yet Bouvet, it seems to me, isn't a walk in the park compared with climbing up Rock Hall. So, all credit to Emil and to Nobby, who I've known for a long time, and I would never have expected him to do this, but there again, he's a complete nutcase, and he pulled it off, and I worked him from there, and it's great. And of course, Cam now is on his way to setting a new record for time spent on Rock Hall, so that's fantastic, of course.
Yeah, so all in all, they did very, very well. Well, I didn't know you was the president of CDX. I didn't realise you was the president, so you would get that one quiet.
Oh, I've been president for a number of years now, only because they've got nobody else to do. You know how it is, yeah. That's an honorary role. I leave the running of it to the committee. I just go and shake hands and do presidential things.
Sounds good to me. But let's say you're happy, you're smiling. That's the most important thing, Don. I'm going to not take too much more of your time, but look after yourself, and thanks for the chat.
No, thank you, and always enjoyable having a chat with you, even if I have to sit here looking at your bright orange T-shirts.
Well, maybe another time I'll get you some sunglasses. Thank you, Don. Bye.
Right, cheers.
For all the news, links and information, visit www.ICQPodcast.com.
So, I'm here on the IARU stand here at Friedrichshafen 2023, and I'm joined by Mike, SP2 Juliet. Mike, how are you doing?
Pleasure, hello.
Hello, and I understand you're a board member for a thing called Shaping the Future.
Yeah, this is one of the programs IARU Region 1 developed recently. Basically, we were alarmed by the declining numbers of amateur radio operators, and well, the demography isn't very optimistic.
Yes.
That's why the program. We have defined a huge scope of basically things to do within the program. We had very fruitful meetings, and based on those meetings, we had a huge scope to take care of. And right now we are starting with forming the solid projects out of that.
Sure.
With decent budget, we hope that we will make it happen.
And I can see, so the IRU, I must say, the stand is one of the largest stands here at the events. Lots of people here doing lots of good work. And you mentioned actually earlier you're actually a listener of the podcast. I should perhaps put that at the start.
Indeed.
So,
you were my company through numerous journeys in my car.
Very interesting.
I really love it.
And so back to the future. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of organisations in the hobby that are trying to encourage the youth to get into amateur radio, to keep the hobby going. The demographic is people are aging, I suppose. So what sort of activities are you doing? What sort of things are you doing to try to encourage people to get involved?
Well, we are trying to be beyond that.
Okay.
Because not only amateur radio need the promotion, well, the good PR it really deserves.
Yeah.
As a hobby of hobbies, or as the president of IRU says, the technical pastime.
Yes.
So we want to be relevant to the society, basically, STEM ambassadors, and we are not only focused on the youth, but also on all the ham radio operators trying new things and being relevant in
okay. So it's not just about getting people in that are young, but also keep people in the hobby as well. In fact,
the youngsters actually, they have some competition, so they're gone. They are just across from our booth, so they're gone
so
now.
that bit of background music you can hear is the youngsters on the air stands, which is
Maybe
part of the
they are
IRU.
on the air right now.
Possibly, yes.
Yeah, well, basically, we try to be as broad as possible,
right,
in order to secure a good future for all ham radio operators, young and old, new and returning, and YLs, OMs.
It's funny because I hear a lot of people that say, "Oh, actually, I've been licensed for 30, 40 years, but I haven't done much radio recently," and they're actually getting back into the patch, retired, or they've kids moved out, that sort of thing, and then suddenly they are having some much more spare time and suddenly want to get back into the hobby. And that's certainly something I've noticed. Even this weekend, people talk to people here saying that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they are bounced back because the technology moved forward so much.
Yes.
That they are not sure where to start.
Yes, and some people are saying, "Oh, these new radios, SDR radios, and you got
FT8 is killing the hobby."
All that, yeah, absolutely.
Well, come on! I learned how to properly set up my microphone for ALC because doing FT8. So.
Yes, no, it's very interesting to see that people that are starting out, someone's a little bit nervous about joining, but actually, people that have been doing this for years can sometimes have that lack of confidence because, like you say, technology's moved on, and perhaps they haven't been involved for a while, and they turn up at an event like this and look at some of the new radios with the spectrum display and the digital modes and things like DMR and say FT8 and some of the newer technologies, and some people can get a little bit not frightened, but perhaps not so confident perhaps with some of those things.
Well, I would say maybe not sure where to start.
Yes. Yes.
When you are, let's say, established in your life and you have this surplus amount of money to actually buy yourself a rig, then you have such a huge plethora of different types of equipment you can buy, that you are really unsure where to start.
So what sort of guidance do you give people in that position? Is it go and find a club, or what's...
Well, basically, we try to look at the things from a broader perspective. So we are... The first project that got funded under Shaping the Future is HamRadio.org, which will be a website hub for all the activities.
Right.
Not only to create a greater PR for ham radio, but also to invite everybody. The scope is huge. So personally, what is important for me, one of the hardest also, maybe programs in this package is helping teachers teach or include ham radio in teaching STEM subjects.
Actually, so it's funny because I think amateur radio's got a huge scope for education. So you've got all the technical stuff around electronics and communications, but also history. There's lots of things about the history of Morse code and the history of communications. I think there's lots of I think overlap between with education our hobby.
And you can dive in so many directions.
Yeah.
You can solder things and teach yourself electronics.
Yeah.
Or you can not solder at all and, receive satellites like these young guys just knew us do.
And on the stand here, I know that Martin was talking to the other Mike from the IRU, and he was talking to him about some of the innovation that's going on within the, especially in the Region 1. I just saying some of the clever things going on. So yeah, it's very very interesting stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So look, Mike, thank you very much for your time. It's been
Pleasure.
Fantastic to meet you here, and have a great show and have a great trip home.
You too.
Thank you. Cheers.
Whether it's across the pond or over the channel, the ICQ podcast is international.
Herzlich willkommen in Deutschland.
Good evening.
73 de España.
By amateurs, for amateurs.
Hi guys, I'm with the SDXF Foundation, the Swiss DX group, I believe. And I'm with their vice chairman, who's also called Martin. So good to meet you, Martin.
Hi, Martin.
And,
I'm glad to sit on the hot chair.
You're on the hot chair, yeah, because the boss stitched you up, didn't he? Yeah. So I hear that you guys are concerned about certain things and you want to make rule changes.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to talk about rule changes because you may or may not have picked up in the UK we're about to have a lot of license changes. They were announced this week. There's a consultation document.
Yeah.
So if your changes and the UK changes work, we may be able to do far more for you. So please tell us what you're trying to do.
Okay, fine. Okay, my ideas have nothing to do with rule changes from the English government. It's about DXing.
Yeah.
And I worked pretty hard and had a lot of fun working DX.
Yeah.
I'm on top of on a roll. That means I have all the 340 countries on the list of ARRL.
Right.
That's really the top. And I realized today it's not possible for young people or operators who started only now with DXing to reach even honor roll. Honor roll means I have less than 10 countries missing. You need 331, and more than 15 countries have not been activated for more than 15 years.
Right.
And that's boring for young people.
Yeah.
They need a challenging task, but an achievable task. And today it's no more possible to achieve honor roll. That is what I'm thinking about.
So your honor roll, as you say, is you work all those countries.
Yeah.
But you can't do it because some are no longer on the air. Is it better, and I don't know because I'm not a DXer, would it be better to have different levels in here? So you have 100 countries, 200 countries, 300 countries, they have a gold, silver, bronze type award.
No, I don't think so. Because honor roll, I call it the heaven for DXs. Yeah. And if you have different levels, you still have the better heaven and the less good heaven. You have differences. And there's one heaven for radio amateurs. So my idea was another approach. 2 countries, it's forbidden to have amateur radio.
Yeah.
That's North Korea and it's Turkmenistan. At least 1 country is a military restricted area, San Felix. And there are many islands which are under nature reserve.
Yeah.
And they don't want to step on that island. So you can't activate them. So my idea was, don't touch the list, because the list has geographical and political requirements. And it changes with political changes. For instance, German Democratic Republic is deleted. It does not count for honor roll.
Yeah.
Switzerland is active. It counts for honor roll. And 340 are active. So my idea is, when a country or an island, they call it entity. Yeah. When an entity has not been activated for more than 15 years, put it into a new status, I call it suspended.
Yeah.
And then it does not count for honor roll. And if somebody activates these islands or this entity, it will count again.
Okay.
So not deleted, a third status.
But when you say if somebody activates,
Yeah.
say, an obscure island, yeah, does that mean that it's only activating, or you only have an activator on that island for, say, 2 weeks? Therefore, anybody new coming into the hobby would still have the same problem.
Yeah.
Does it mean that a country has to be available to be
No.
activated for a longer period?
One expedition is good enough.
Yeah.
It has to be defined whether it needs 5,000 QSOs or it needs 2,000 unique calls. That means different operators, or 5,000 different operators, but then it's okay again.
Yeah.
And if you miss that, and that happened to me too, you have to wait until the next activation or 15 years.
Yeah.
And then it disappears to suspended status.
Okay.
The problem is there are some islands pretty dangerous, pretty expensive, or under natural reserve. Who is going to define what is expensive and what not? The expedition team, not ARRL. Who is going to define what is dangerous or not? The expedition team, not the ARRL. So they're still allowed to activate an entity, which is rare. If they succeed, fine. If they do not go, no problem.
Yeah. Now, I was talking to one of our American presenters.
Yeah.
And he was saying now that people are designing boxes.
Yeah, radio in a box.
Radio in a box.
Yeah.
That you effectively put onto an island.
Yeah.
That so you don't interfere with the wildlife too much, minimal disruption, and then they operate from a boat or a ship offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to go? Is that happening?
That's a tool, not a solution.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's only valid for islands who are easily accessible.
Yeah.
It's not possible for Bouvet, for instance, and it's not possible for North Korea.
Yeah.
It's still forbidden. And if the argument is we have only a low footstep on a natural reserve, please let us do this small little step. The step would be even smaller if you don't go.
All right.
Why should amateur radio go to a natural reserve and some 100 miles away is another island which you can activate? No problem.
Yeah.
If I want to prove my station, I can reach the whole world. I don't need all the entities. I can work 40 zones and then I have my result.
Right. But
it's just to lower the pressure to activate such entities.
Yeah.
And younger DXs, new DXs can reach honor roll. It's fair for them.
Yeah. So the honor roll it's kind of an all or nothing, because if I was starting tomorrow, I'd have to work 300 odd
31 for honor roll.
331 for honor roll.
Uh-huh.
So there's nothing between nothing and 331.
No. There is the first award is with 100 entities.
Right.
And then you have stickers for 150, 200 and so on. But the real heaven starts with honor roll.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is something, there is kind of rewards, because I'm thinking for a youngster now.
Yeah.
There's a rewards cycle where they can look at it and go, I achieved it this at this stage in my life, I achieved that at my stage in my life, I've now done this many.
These lists are published, you can watch them. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
There are hanging such lists.
Yeah, that's good. So, it does make sense what you're saying. And why should one country rule, like the ARRL, why should they say what everybody's doing?
Yeah. That's a completely different question. That's the political questions inside amateur radio. Yeah. There's another country who defines what is an island.
Yeah.
I take it as it is.
Yeah.
What I miss is a flexibility of the DX advisory committee.
Yeah.
These are the guys who rules the DXEC program. And they are not really flexible. They think it has been always like this. I have been working 30 years. Newer DXer also have to work 30 years. That's wrong.
Yeah.
They can work 50 years. They won't reach honor roll.
Yeah.
No.
And the other thing is, nicely, and I'm probably going to get a terrible slap from somebody for saying this.
Yeah.
Youngsters,
I had a shitstorm over me.
Yeah.
Actually, somebody asked me, you should have now a car, you can remotely open the door. I have such a car, and in addition, remotely start the engine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what I was thinking of is youngsters today, if it isn't very instant, they're going to lose interest. So if you can never achieve, never going to achieve your 331.
Yeah.
In say a reasonable time, and let's say a reasonable time.
Yeah.
They won't do it.
It's not instant. Nowadays, you can get to 300 entities pretty fast.
Right.
Some few years only. To come into the honor roll, also with modified rules, will still be a task of decades.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
It must be a challenge.
Yeah.
And must be achievable. Then it's fair.
Yeah. Well, that sounds an interesting role, and I wish you every success on that one.
I keep on trying.
Yeah, keep trying, because sometimes we don't succeed straight away, but keep trying.
I don't have to lose anything, but I keep trying. Yeah.
So, Martin, if somebody wanted to contact you, what's your internet address for them to contact you?
Go to qrz.com.
Yeah.
HB Hotel Bravo 9 Bravo Golf Victor. There you find my email address.
There you go. It's, as Martin's just told you. And a nice Swiss call sign it is too, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me.
Pleasure for us as well.
Thank you.
Cheers. Well, as the day comes a little bit to the close at Friedrichshafen here, it's been a busy day, I would suggest.
It has been a busy day today, yes.
My apologies. I should ask you to introduce yourself and introduce yourself and what you do on IOTA.
Okay, so my name is Caesar, and I'm B3LYC. So I'm kind of an IOTA chaser, IOTA activator, and I happen to be right now the operations manager and the deputy general manager for the Islands on the Air Limited, which is the administrators of the IOTA program.
All right. So Islands on the Air, it's something I've been aware of. I've not chased them, I'll be honest with you, but it's...
Don't worry, nobody's perfect.
Well, I'm well past perfect, that's all right. But no, it's an interesting one. I believe every island has a designated number, and
not quite.
Not quite.
Not quite. So the World Open Sea Islands,
right,
according to some criteria, have been divided in 1,200 groups.
Right.
We'd like to call them references. So, for all intents and purposes, at the present time, because we can't really afford to pick up on every single little tiny rock, there are about 15, maybe 16,000 islands which count for IOTA, for these IOTA references. So these approximately 1,200 groups include approximately 16,000 islands. But there will be a few more which we may include or not, depending whether there are operations scheduled from them or not, and things like that. But at the present time, only 1,136 of these groups have ever, been, let's say, activated. Radio operations have to take place from them. So there are another, quite a few, 64 of them that still need to be brought on the air for the first time, which take a long time.
Yeah. So I suppose the two big islands this year so far would have been Bouvet and Rockall that I know about. You can probably tell me I'm wrong.
Well, Yes and no. From just an IOTA standpoint, Bouvet ranks probably somewhere on the order of 480th.
Right.
So, for any intents and purposes, 480 is not really that much of a island in demand. Not for the IOTA chasers. It's for the DXCC fans. Rockall has definitely been an excellent, first of all, an excellent operation, but it's also pretty rare. IOTA is ranked 42, and I happen to have operated from an island which is the most it's part of the most remote group in Fiji, which was ranked 48. To give an example, to give just a little bit of an example here, there are, as we know, 340 DXCC current entities, and there are 1,136 current IOTA references. So that means that the ratio is approximately 3.3, which means that an IOTA that would be ranked in the top 33 from a rarity point of view only would correspond to the 10 most wanted DXCCs. Not that those DXCCs would necessarily have anything to do with IOTAs, but from a rarity point of view, that's kind of where we stand.
So you're kind of almost aligned, but you don't have to be, is what you're saying.
No, for example, at this level, the top, IOTAs that would be ranked in the 40s would be in demand by approximately, just going to give it a range, approximately 90% of the chasers interested in this program. The IOTAs which would be ranked, just again as an example, in the top 5, 6, would be in demand by 99% of the guys. So, from the point of view of rarity, if Bouvet is ranked number 2 for the DXCC program, but about 480 or so for IOTA, that means that there are a lot of IOTA chasers who must have worked Bouvet. IOTA is a program. Well, when you have about 11 and 36 entities that need to work, it would probably take 20, 25, maybe 30 years or longer to get to that number or close to it. So the guys who would be would have, 1,000 IOTAs or 1,050 or more. They most certainly worked Bouvet many years ago on different operations and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where we are. And because of its interest for the DXCC, certainly must have triggered same chasers, probably passionate DXers, an interest back then as well.
Yeah. So, from what you've said and from what I understand, you can either be a chaser or an activator.
Or both.
Or both.
Yes. Yes.
Now, I'd imagine there are more. You're both, are you?
I'm both.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember I've been in the hobby just over 20 years, and I remember going to an RSGB convention when it was at Crawley, so that's a long time ago.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was at the dinner, sitting next to somebody who was telling me all about his activations.
Yes.
And he was an airline pilot, and he said, "Oh, I'm flying here and I'm flying there," and I thought, what a great hobby if you're an airline pilot to go and activate islands.
Absolutely, it's fabulous. I think that some people have the time or can make the time. Not everybody is in a position to be able to do that, obviously. And sometimes people are in chase of some adventures, some journey, and it is highly possible that some of these targets fit those parameters. Adventure, something out of the ordinary, and if time allows, then you can make many other people happy by just going there and activating those remote locations. But my my drive in activations, my drive. I started activating, I started going on these trips when I already had confirmed 950 ionos.
Right.
So, you know, you gotta imagine that by then, if you have 950 ionos confirmed, and you need a few more, those will be pretty rare, pretty difficult to kind of get to. If I haven't been able to work them for, I don't remember now, but let's say 20 years. Well, there might have been some difficulty in getting there for one reason or another. Government doesn't issue permits, maybe war zones or some other, trouble in the area.
Yeah.
Or just simply very difficult from a logistical point of view. There's no, equipment to get you there, either an airplane or a boat and so on and so on. So this is why somehow I kind of had been involved into operations that are to very remote places. And whether the places are in the tropics or in the subantarctic or in the Arctics, they remain remote, which is why some of my friends and colleagues still believe that some of these places won't be reactivated for another 15, 20, 25, 30 years.
So, just out of interest, what was your favourite activation? Which one gave you the most enjoyment?
It's a very difficult thing because I have been, I think I've done about 2/3 of all the activations, probably about 28 or 29 alone.
Yeah.
So obviously, when I say alone from an amateur radio operating point of view, but I obviously was with guides, sometimes with quite a few guides.
Yeah.
Areas were kind of difficult, and these guys kept me away from trouble.
Yeah.
But so it's a special thing. A group activation requires a certain bonding, a certain experience that is very different to anything else. And then for the remote one, for the lonely operations, well, that requires a little bit of being able to kind of put it together and stay afloat. Each one of them has certain things. It's very difficult to say. I think that perhaps Diego Ramirez, which was, it's kind of about 120, 140 kilometers southwest of Cape Horn.
Right.
It's just that subantarctic territory, the richness of the fauna, that's something completely amazing, that I'm still living today. It's just in talking to you, just thinking of it, has a very different, left a very different impression on me than a bare island in the Arctic, where I kind of endure the cold and the winter, excited to go in the winter because in the summer there are polar bears and it's less of a chance to meet one in winter, so it's kind of harsh. And minus 20, minus 30 C. But so there's a certain flavor to it that is kind of unique, makes it unique. But it's not the same as Diego Ramirez or the trip to the Antipodes, which is Zulu Lima 9 Alpha. So the first one is in the Chilean waters of subantarctics, and the other one is in the one of the subantarctic islands that belongs to New Zealand. So. These are, as far as the group operations are concerned, they're probably some of the most interesting ones that I would like to point out. But at the same time, again, I have the operations in the Arctic. I was in the Arctic twice in winter, and experiencing that cold at minus 30. I'm kind of thinking always that guys who are much more capable than me or we, like Amundsen, who spent a winter there for a long time and made his preparation for attacking the Antarctic continent. So
you must feel that you have a sense of achievement if you've been to these places that a lot of us are never going to go to. It must give you a nice warm feeling of achievement.
Well, I'm looking for the journey. I'm not looking at a personal achievement, because the many other activators before me, I just happen to be in an era where it's very difficult to go to these places. It's expensive, and you have to fight tooth and nail to get the permits sometimes. But it's more of I do have a good sense of the journey, what it takes to get there. And I don't think that, the wide amateur radio world, I don't know why, maybe I know why, but it doesn't really matter what I think. I don't think that it sees these IOTA operations on the same level as the massive ones where, you make 100,000, 150,000 contacts, 180,000 contacts, so on and so forth. But they are perils. They are, there's a certain spirit of IOTA, which will not be taken away by the modern type of operations where you deploy certain machines and then you remote it from anywhere in the world and operate it like that. I don't think that that's the spirit of IOTA. I don't think that the IOTA spirit will die. It hasn't started with me, and I'm just taking the torch and carrying it from here to there, and somebody else is going to have to pick it up and move it further. Yeah. So there's something in these operations that are done by numerous people. I just happen to have a few ones that are, maybe resonate a little bit more in terms of rarity and so on. So I still happen to be activating 10 new ones. Well, in the 2010, 2020, 10 new ones. That's a pretty difficult task, but the many IOTA operators, and I think that this idea of going to these distant places and trying to be there for a week, a few days, and there's something attractive in it, and there's a little bit of an adventure, there's a little bit of a technical abilities, a little bit of operating skills that are required in order to manage all this stuff and keep it all together. But it's something that fits my personality. It's I'm sure that things for different guys in this whole beautiful world of DXing or amateur radio. And
we're all different, and we all do enjoy different parts of the hobby. And this sounds like a really interesting part. Something I've not done. I'm aware of it. Probably should. I would more likely be a chaser rather than an activator. So I will go out and start to find out more about it. But if our listeners wanted to find out more about IOTA, there must be a website.
Absolutely. So we have a website which is iota-world.org. And you can log into it, like you can ask for an account, which is trivial. It's just as easy as creating any account. The account does allow a few more privileges in the sense of being able to get more information about this and that. But you don't have to actually get an account. You could still browse and get quite a bit of information. And then decide whether there's something for you or not. And if it's something for you or for our listeners, by all means get an account. Yeah. Because there's going to be a lot more information there. Sure. And then just start contacting us. There's also an IOTA forum. I think it's K0 Alpha Papa, who's Dragan, who's the moderator of this account, of this forum, sorry. And it is a relatively small community, although we have a few thousand of chasers. But when expeditions take place, we'll be there.
Sounds good to me. It sounds really good. Listen, I've taken a lot of your time.
Thank you very, very much for your time.
But I've really enjoyed talking to you. And guys, when you see this video or you hear it on the podcast, have a look at IOTA and see what they're doing. So
I'd like to ask as many questions. I'm still available for any means.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you
Cheers.
so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The ICQ Podcast. Getting it said for amateur radio.
Well, everybody, I really hope you've enjoyed our second half hour roundup from Friedrich Schava and Ham Radio 2023. And our features episode really is that opportunity of expanding your ham radio hobby, maybe doing some different things, some activities, etc., with some of the special interest groups, and proves the point that there's a lot of interesting things at these rallies. Once you get past the big dealer stands and the manufacturer stands, etc., there's some very interesting people with lots of thoughts and feelings and ideas about our hobby that are well worth engaging with from there. So, as I say, we've got all the information there in those in that feature of how to get in contact with the various groups, etc., and hopefully it will help you expand that hobby there. And I'm sure you agree, Dad. Certainly yourself and Ed Durrant, DD5 Lee and Papa, and Chris, Mike Zero Tango Charlie Hotel, and yourself certainly have some interesting chats with, these type of people that we interviewed in this episode, and certainly does show there's more to ham radio than expensive black boxes and big name dealers.
Yeah, certainly did. And in fairness, my granddaughter, Holly, your daughter, helped us on the Saturday. And I think she was surprised how busy we do get, which is nice that she appreciated what we get up to. And mustn't forget our good Mrs. B, and who very much helped in the background at Freaks Oven. And one of the ones that I have emailed him, and I apologise profusely, but we forgot to interview Graham at BHI. Usually have a quick chat with Graham, find out what's going on. So, Graham, we're not ignoring you. I did send you an email apologising, but as I say, great fun at Freaks Oven, Colin.
Oh, very true, very true. And as I say, so we got. If you want to see the visuals of the interviews we've done, we'd invite you to go to youtube.com/ICQPodcast. So youtube.com/ICQPodcast to check out the actual videos of what we did there, and as I say, you'd be more than welcome to find out from there. Now, members of our newsletter and our YouTube channel, etc., would have seen, our announcement this week of our work we're going to be doing with WRTC 2026. Now, as I say, it does prove the point of, keeping in touch with us across the multitude of ways of keeping in touch so we can get this latest information out to you. So if you're not a member of the newsletter, we would encourage you to subscribe. All you need to do is go to ICQPodcast.com, sign up to a newsletter there. Now, our promise to you is this: we will not sell your name to a dealer. We will not sell your name to a manufacturer. We will only send you relevant information along about the podcast, news and information, etc., from what we do. And on average, you'll probably get a couple of emails a week when we're doing a lot of work. But as I say, it can drop down to one a week when, as I say, there's not a huge amount going on in the show. So, as I say, the plan is, to only let you know about relevant things to do with the podcast. So, we promise we'll look after your data and your information. And as you know, we don't take advertising, etc. So we're not going to sell that information to you. But it would mean the fact we can get this information out to you quickly when we have an event like WRTC being announced outside of our usual schedule. So please do consider signing up to that newsletter so we can keep you up to date with what's going on. Now, to prove the point that we don't take, advertising, etc., we only take donations from you, very kind listeners to support us. It's our 15th birthday month in July, and it's a great opportunity for everybody to help us out and, make sure that we have a good funds, etc., to complete our tasks for the rest of the year. And lots of you get involved this time of year to show your appreciation for what we do and show the value for what we do. And this episode, we'd like to thank some of those donors who helped us out. So we had Keith Schultzman, KR7 Romeo Kilo, Frank Westphal, Kilo 6 Foxtrot Whiskey, Dino Papas, Kilo Lima 0 Sierra, Ed Jones, K8 Mike Echo Juliet, and Phil VK6 Alpha Delta Foxtrot, who kindly sent us donations for our birthday. So we really do appreciate those very, very kind donations. It's not too late to get involved. As I say, all these donations pay for things like, the digital group, the website, the podcast, etc. So it's not too late to show your appreciation, get involved. All you need to do is go to ICQPodcast.com/donate. and we've got a 15th birthday donation option for you. But at the same time, there's other options there as well for you to show the value. And anything you send our way, as it goes towards your ICQ podcast and goes towards the funding of what we do. So, as I say, whatever the value is of our show, as I turn it into a financial figure, pop it our way, and I say we'd be greatly appreciated. Now, as always, we'd like to thank Dan, Kilo Bravo 6 November Uniform, Caryn, KD2 Golf Uniform Tango, Edmund, Mike 0, Mike November Golf, and Ed, DD5 Lima Papa for taking part in the News Roundtable. And we do appreciate them, I say, giving up their time to help us with this show, this episode. Right, I think that just about sums up everything for this episode 408 of your ICQ podcast. So hopefully lots of value for you today, lovely long show for you, etc. So all those who listen on commute will have lots to, as they enjoy. And as they do, remember to support us and what we do from there. So I think that just about wraps up everything, doesn't it, from our point of view? I'm just checking. I don't think there's anything else for us to cover, is there?
Yeah, not really. I will be at the Grand Day Out at the back end of the month. I think it's the Sunday the 30th down in Ashford, just off Junction 10. Looking forward to that. That's a nice little rally. It's not one of the huge ones. You won't find manufacturers there. But if you're in the south of England and you fancy a trip out, nice little rally. And equally, come and say hi to us. You know, we don't bite, and that goes for all the presenters. We're all house trained, so we love talking to you. But that's it, Colin. I'm going to make your mum a cup of tea, find a biscuit in a minute, and see what else we can do for the rest of the day.
Perfect. Well, on that note, then, I'll bid you 73s and all our very kind listeners, donors, 73s. And as I say, I hope you guys continue to enjoy the hobby, find wonderful inspiration in everything that as I say we can do. And as I say, we'll catch up with you again in a fortnight's time. 73s.
Yeah, 73.